Again, the chief shared that people are welcome to stay out in the hall, but if they do, and if it gets a little loud, it's his call. May have to just close the doors, but we don't want to do that. So if people out in the hall can be quiet, that'd be great.
Mr. Mayor, can you speak up? We honestly can't hear what you're saying.
All right. We're okay to be in this room, but if people out in the hall can be quiet, that's important. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't realize I wasn't projecting enough. But the chief said it's okay to have people in the hallway until it's too full and it interferes with business, and he'll just want to close the doors, and that'll be that. So if everybody will just kindly be quiet so everybody in the room and out in the hall can hear, that would be important, okay? Okay, so I'm going to call this public meeting to order. The process before we begin, let me share with you how a Board of Adjustment process works. We will first have a public hearing on a couple of different matters. I think the goal is to probably have a hearing on the first two matters, suspend to a business meeting, have our business meeting do our consideration of those issues, and see if we can come to resolution, and then go back into a hearing. What does that mean? That means in each case, the applicant will be afforded an opportunity to present that which they are, the case which they are making. This is a quasi-judicial process, folks. This is not a legislative policy process like a legislature or the council or anything like that. This is a quasi hearing. Then we'll take input from the public, and then the applicant in each case will have an opportunity to respond. We'll close off the hearing. Be no more public input. We'll go into a business meeting. We'll discuss the issues and render an opinion. Counselor, did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, very good. All right. There are a couple formalities that have to be dispensed with. So first I have to read this notice out loud. Kathy, you're liking the fact I'm talking loudly because you always remind me I don't speak up loud enough. City of Newcastle Board of Adjustment notice of public hearings. This is Thursday, March 30th, 2023. It's 6:30 p.m. We are meeting in the city Public Safety Police Department Community Room. An application has been filed by ONC Investments LLC, PO Box 388, Newcastle, Delaware 19720, owner and applicant regarding properties located in the DG Downtown Gateway Zoning District at 702 and 706 Delaware Street, tax parcels numbers 21-015.00.006 and 21-015.00.003, requesting a special exception to construct a 3-story residential apartment, 32 apartment units, pursuant to section 230-21.1 parens B and parens 2 parens 2 and parens of the City of Newcastle Code. Number 2, an application has been filed by J.E. Evans Jr., 311 Balt Avenue, owner and applicant, for a property located in the R1 zoning district at 311 Balt Avenue, Newcastle, Delaware 19720. Tax parcel number 21-004.00.006, seeking 1, an appeal from the code official's determination of a violation of the city code section 230-28, or alternatively number 2, a variance from the maximum aggregate driveway width requirement of code section 230-28 to allow for construction of second driveway for off-street parking with aggregate driveway width of 44 feet. And finally, number 3, an application has been filed by Christine Mazziello, 151 Casimir Drive, Newcastle, Delaware, 19720. Owner and applicant regarding the property located in the R1 zoning district at 151 Casimir Drive. Tax parcel numbers, 21 007.00-036, requesting a variance to code 230-33. Restricting accessory buildings to 15 feet in height reading what it says, to construct a garage outbuilding with a height of not more than 19 feet. For the purpose of considering this application, the Board of Adjustment will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 30, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in the community room in the Newcastle Police Department, located at 1 Municipal Boulevard, Newcastle, Delaware, 19720. Michael J. Quaranta, Mayor, Chairman, Board of Adjustment, City of Newcastle, posted on 3/15/2023. Okay, we have two fellow board members here, so for attendance purposes, Kathy, I am Mike Quaranta, and we have two other board members.
Stephen Zoller.
And
Bob Irwin.
okay, we have two members absent tonight, but we do have a quorum, and so therefore we will proceed. All right, let's start with is Ms. Mazziello here? She is. All right. You're welcome to come on up and share what your application's intentions are and describe the issues before you. And then after you have a chance to talk, if there's anybody else with any other opinion, we'll allow them to make some comments. You'll be allowed to respond to what you've heard, and then we'll proceed from there. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Currently, we have a recreation vehicle, a trailer in our driveway. We want to put it in a shed and get it out of the driveway. My husband wants to build, and I am in agreement to build a shed building. We currently have 1.5 lots. The backyard slopes down. It backs up to trustee property. We want to put it separate from the house, as deep as our property will allow. When you're looking from the street, it will not appear as high as the house because of the slope. But in order to fit the trailer in it, the peak of the roof has to reach just under 19 feet. And the current ruling is that it not exceed 15.
Describe visuals. Also, just visuals are helpful.
Okay.
I've not been to your home,
Okay,
so
so we
I
have.
know the street,
Mhm.
but what's the front of the house look like, neighbors,
Okay,
and then behind the house?
so when you're coming around Casimir Drive, we have some pictures.
Don't take a tank. By the way, you passed the first test. You said you and your husband were in agreement. That's not unimportant.
So. Can I pass the picture?
Good.
Okay, so this is a picture of our property and the trailer in the driveway. And you can see the dirt in the grass. That would be the pathway back. And there's currently a shed. And we would be putting it where that shed is.
Okay, so I see a white fence and I see a shed.
Okay, so the white fence is just a little piece hiding trash cans.
Okay,
So it would be right in front of that shed.
okay,
And our neighbor to the right has signed a letter. Our neighbor across the street, everybody that is in visual
in
sight of it,
support or opposition?
for support,
Support,
not
okay.
caring.
Okay, okay, Okay.
We have some other pictures of similar sheds in the neighborhood. It's gonna look pretty much the same as these other sheds. If anybody has seen the one on New Amstel, Greg Yacucci's, it's gonna look similar to that.
in terms of style.
Yes.
But did those sheds exceed the height requirement?
I do not believe they did. I believe they reached right up to it.
Okay. And tell me, what's what's the prohibiting factor that
The
requires?
trailer will not fit because of the air conditioning unit on it.
I got you.
It won't fit in a shed that has the apex,
Right.
the peak.
Yep.
At 15.
Got it.
So if we just put it to just under 19, we can center it and
Right.
put the air conditioner will fit right under in the middle of it.
Okay. The property, oh, go ahead. Any other comments about the proposal?
I can't think of it.
Okay.
It is a double, it is a lot and a half, so it's bigger than the lots around it. And again, with the slope of the property from the street, it will actually appear lower than the house, so it doesn't seem to me or our neighbors that it would be obstructive in any way.
And then what's the, let me go back to the. What did I do with it? There it is, there it is. Give me the dimensions again of the width.
24 by 28. It's 24 wide.
Yep.
28 deep. And the
19,
garage door would be 12 foot
Right.
in height to be able to accept the RV to go in it with the air conditioning and to have one of our the pitch on the A roof, a 412 pitch is almost like the minimum to be able to have a pitch on it for weather, snow.
Right,
Okay.
so in order to get the garage door to fit this thing, the standard for the roof ends up being over 15 feet, just under 19.
I have a couple questions. Do you have documentation or are some of your neighbors here?
Do you have the letters?
Yeah, and letters.
We'd like to enter those into the record.
You can just go with it.
Okay, these all say the same thing, so I'm gonna read it once, for the benefit of the public record, but also for my colleagues up here. To whom it may concern, I understand that my neighbor, Christine E. Mazziello, who owns and resides at 151 Casimir Drive in Van Dyke Village, needs to build an accessory building, parentheses garage and parens, to store a recreational vehicle, parens RV and parens, that is currently in the driveway of that property. Ms. Mazziello has informed me that the height of the peak of the new building would exceed the deed restriction for accessory buildings by about 4 feet. And this would be necessary to allow for a garage door that can accommodate an RV that measures 11 feet in height. I am aware that the new building would be built in the rear of the yard in a place that backs to open space, and that the slope of that area would create the illusion of a visual consistency with the nearby buildings. Additionally, having the RV in a garage behind the house would set back from view seems preferable, and I do endorse the plan without objection. You're gonna have to tell me whose signature this is. It looks like Gary.
Yeah, Gary is directly, if you're looking at the house to the right,
And the address,
he is at 153 Casimir Drive.
and this is Michael Marinelli, 138.
He's directly across the street.
This is Carol.
She's
Carol, what's her
across the
last name?
street and Syva,
Okay,
SYVA,
okay, and the address,
136 Casimir.
okay, and that was Bill.
Yeah, he's on the next street, which is a cul-de-sac, and so it ends up, he looks at our backyard from his cul-de-sac.
Okay, thank you, all right. Okay, let's see. Yeah, those would be pretty fantastic. Yeah, all right. In reaching out to neighbors, did anybody object?
No.
Did anybody mysteriously have their TV on and not answer the door?
No.
Okay. Just checking. Did You have some say in the property that is behind your property
Oh, yeah,
in another role in your life, right?
you could say that.
Is that undevelopable property or is that developable property?
I never asked anybody, I never brought it up to anybody. I'm assuming it's on, it's a marsh. I mean, the marshland comes right up to our property, which is, why we have to have flood insurance, even though our house has never had water, because the water comes right up to it.
And the building that we propose to build will have to have gates in it. At the bottom
Because of the marsh.
per square foot because of flood.
Thank you. Stand by for a second. Bob, do you have any questions?
I do not, sir.
You're saying from looking at the street view, it's going to be no higher than your house.
No, it's gonna be much lower than our house.
And then you get the RV and the garage and everybody.
All right, we don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Just hang around in case we'll see if anybody else has any comments.
Will do, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, is there anybody here who would like to comment on this application? Anybody out in the hall that wants to comment on this application? All right, thank you for that. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next application. And then after that, hearing is conducted and completed, we'll close out the hearing. We'll have a business meeting. We'll talk about the two applications. And we'll see if we come to some resolution, and then we'll move on to the last application. All right, second application tonight is Jay Evans present.
Yes.
Hi, Jay. Well, go ahead and share with us what your plans are and why you're here.
Well, my property is on the corner of 14th and Ball Street. And there's a very large lot there that is pretty much useless. It's not big enough to do anything with.
I've seen it.
There was an existing depression there. Where there was a garage
Right
there back many, many years ago.
on the
Well,
left side of the house.
yes,
Mhm.
I just wanted to utilize that space for off-street parking.
Okay.
Is all I wanted.
Okay.
So,
Build a structure,
no,
never.
no, I mean. Foreseen in the future, at the present moment, no.
Okay.
So I just wanted from off-street parking, because I have a boat, and I wanted to park the boat there to free up my driveway. Total footage,
Do you have any pictures or anything?
yes, well, I have pictures of where the existing depression was. All right, and you can see. I don't have any recent pictures, but. You can see the depression right there on the corner of Bolton 14th. And the driveway goes up to the trees.
So Jay, as I recall, as I face your house
Yes,
on Balt Avenue, it faces Balt,
yes,
okay? And you got a garage and a driveway to the right,
yes,
okay? And the property you're talking about loops around the corner, I guess that's 14th,
yes,
and you wanna have the entrance be on 14th?
no.
Okay,
On
entrance be on
On
Balt,
the same side.
Okay,
yes, In
okay,
front of the house.
got it.
Well, it's there already, right? The driveway's already there.
It was already there, but grass has grown over. The building was knocked down.
Footprint is-
But the depression in the curb was there.
Okay.
And I have a petition from some of my immediate neighbors
Okay,
that had signed.
give me 1 second. God bless Google.
Yep, because that was probably 2010. The property has changed drastically.
Okay, you said you have letters?
Yeah, I have a petition.
Okay,
So the trees are going now too, right?
Yes. They were a nuisance.
essentially, for the people that don't have the benefit of seeing this, what does this say? What's the petition say?
It's just that nobody really objects to the driveway, pretty
Okay.
much.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could read it.
No, I'll read
Okay.
it, but I just want for
Yeah.
folks that, I'll read it out loud. So, petition to the Board of Adjustment of Newcastle, Delaware, subject matter. Appeal from the code officials determination of a violation of the city code section 230-28. Statement of the subject matter and action requested, a variance from the maximum aggregated driveway width requirement code section 230-28 to allow second driveway for off-street parking with aggregate driveway width of 44 feet. We, the undersigned, do not reject the second driveway for off-street parking for J.E. Evans Jr., who resides at 311 Balt Avenue, Newcastle, Delaware, 19720. This is signed, and you might, okay, I've got Charles Barlow,
Yes.
304 Balt Avenue. Julie, is it Lucan?
Lucan,
Okay, 109 East 14th. Jeanette Henready, she lives across the street,
yes.
310 Balt Avenue. Jason, is it Elson or Ellison?
Yes.
Okay, 308 Balt Avenue. And like my last name, the ethnic ones are the ones that always get me.
It's Rick and Lisa, they live directly next.
Thank you, that's good. Is it,
Don't ask me.
It's Scully.
Jeanette knows.
Scully.
Scout, yeah, that's not what it says though, Jeanette, but Prozeski or Proziskit or something like that. All right, 307 Balt Avenue, okay. Were there any neighbors that opposed?
No.
Okay.
None that I know, no.
Nobody's keyed your car?
I hope not.
Okay, all right, all right, all right. Any questions from you, Steve?
No.
Bob, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Hang around.
Okay.
Mr. Bergstrom? Yes, come on up. Okay. This is Jeffrey Bergstrom, city building official. Jeff, what's the issue here?
The law is clear, the driveway maximum permitted width is, I think, 24 feet, and they installed the second driveway that took out the grass and put some gravel in, and bought them, and so they object, and they want it, so they came here to petition for a variance from the maximum driveway width in the R2 district. They do have a rather huge amount of frontage because they're a corner lot, and it's a very big corner lot. But the law doesn't permit any more, the maximum driveway they can have is what they've done.
You have any recommendations?
No, but I certainly don't see any harm.
Okay. Any precedent that this would create that would be problematic?
I don't believe things that come before the board are set precedents.
True story there. Okay. All right. Thank you. Anyone from the public have any comments they'd like to make about this application?
Yeah, I do.
Please come forward, state your name.
My name is Jeanette Henready, and I live at 310 Bald Avenue. I've lived there over 50 years, and Mr. Watts had lived in the house that Jay lives in. There was a shed there at one time, and there was a driveway there with the indention for a driveway. So that driveway has always been there, but nobody ever used it. But it was there when they repaved our street. They put the new concrete in and they put the new driveway in, the indention for the driveway. So Jay is not doing anything new that hadn't already been done 50 years ago.
It was Mr. Bergstrom's first day on the job. All right. But you don't have any objection. You don't have any
No,
objection.
I don't have any objection at all. I would rather than be in a driveway than to be sitting out on the street. Where a lot of them, other people have their cars on, over on Moores Avenue. There's people that have cars parked in their yards. My neighbor on the other side was told that he couldn't do that. He couldn't park his car in the yard. But there's one over on Moores Avenue every morning I go past there. It's sitting in the yard. So why is it discriminated against that? I mean, we're only trying to live by what we believe in. We're taking care of our property. We pay our taxes. We do what's right. And if you keep it off the street, it's not hurting anybody. And you're taking a chance of not having it hit. Because if you go down 14th Street at night, they do their 90 mph. So if your cops want to make some extra money, tell them to sit there.
Now, see the man next door.
Right.
All right, thank you, Ms. Henry. Solicitor,
I just want to make one point of clarification before we go into a business meeting. The applicant has actually asked for two things. He's appealing the decision of the
Correct.
code enforcement officer.
Yep.
And the alternative, he would like a variance. And from the law, it looks like this is a clear violation of the law. There was no permit. I don't know if the applicant would like to just ask for the variance, or he still would like us to determine whether or not this driveway violated the law, or if he just wants to ask for the variance, but we should get
We're
that
just
clarification.
Asking for the variance so I can keep the driveway.
Okay.
Well, I,
So then that part's off the table.
Okay.
We all understand what this driveway is. We're
Right.
just dealing with the variance.
very good. Mr. Evans, any other last comments?
no, sir.
No, okay, all right. All right, at this point, we will, I'll accept a motion and a second to adjourn the hearing.
Motion to adjourn here.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, adjourn business meeting. We're now having our business meeting. Let's, go with the first applicant, the garage that exceeds the height. It backs up to open space that I'm pretty confident is not developable. Property owner is the trustees of the Newcastle Common. Didn't see any letter objecting by them. And appreciate the fact that the applicant has gone to different neighbors to get their input.
Yes.
I personally prefer RVs, boats, things of that nature to be up off the street. I recognize that some people don't have an option because they don't have a lot of property. It'd be great to find a spot in one of our industrial parks for several months each year with insurance, put everybody over there. Other communities do that so that they're not left in the neighborhoods for 3, 4, 5 months at a time when they're not being used. But in this instance, I don't have any concern because of the actual slope of the property too. That makes it much easier because you're not putting a large structure that creates a visual barrier for neighbors. Or it doesn't, it's according to the neighbors, they don't believe it's going to impact their property value. Any other comments from you?
No, I concur with all of that. I like the idea of the optics, that from the roadway and the slope of the property, it's not gonna be larger than the house. I think that's fine.
I agree.
All right. Okay. In that case, the chair will accept a motion on, if someone wants to make a motion on how you want to dispose of this application.
Make a motion to approve the variance.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? No? All right, Mr. Zora?
I'm fine.
Yes,
Yes, I agree.
I would just ask that each person just give the basis for their vote.
correct. Yep, yeah. Again, this is that we have to follow the quick check precedent, right? Want me to start that?
Sure, always struggle with.
All right. So, before I do that, solicitor, why don't you share with everybody again, what are the tests in the quick check case that have to be met in order to either constitute approval, justification, or disapproval?
Sure. I don't have that case handy. I know I have it here printed in my material somewhere, but essentially this is an area variance, not a use variance. It's essentially asking for a variance to increase the allowable height by approximately 4 feet. You need to assess whether or not there's any exceptional practical difficulties unique to this property. The effect on the neighborhood or neighboring properties, is it very different from other sheds? It sounds like the slope may be making it look like the other neighboring properties. Will it change the complexity of the neighborhood or the area surrounding it?
Use of the use of the property. Right.
And there's a few others, and I will have them for you, but essentially, thank you. The nature of the zone of the property and the liens, the character of the immediate vicinity, just how the neighborhood looks. Whether restriction of the applicant properly removed or she's not really moving, she's adding it, doesn't affect her neighbors essentially. And then whether or not you remove this restriction, is there any sort of exceptional practical difficulties they have? And it's essentially trying to fit this shed, this thing into a shed. They need a little more height, so. But what you can consider, I think that the applicant has put on evidence when each of these, it's up to you to weigh whether or not you find those things credible. And you can just simply vote your vote, yes or no, and then simply say why you feel that.
I vote yes because of the slope of the ground allows, there'll be no higher than the house. I think that's unique to the property. Allow it doesn't create a visual problem. I think the idea of attendant around, intended use, it's a residential area. People do have sheds, so I think that's just practical with everything else. And then, so what's the option? So I think the neighbors all agree that they're fine with this, that it helps them. They don't have a problem with it. So from that perspective, I think we're good. And the fourth one, I never really understand. So I can't, I can't address that. I need a little more clarification.
That's fine though.
Yeah, I agree with everything Steve said. I think that the special conditions on the property, the slope of it, provides that the building to be constructed will not be any higher than the house. I think it meets that test.
I too will support this for the reasons stated tonight. I think it's important that if people have the ability to take large, typically recreational vehicles and store them in a way that frankly adds street appeal, curb appeal to the community, that's a positive. I'm not sure that if I stood out on the street, I could tell you the difference whether that thing was at 19 feet or 15 feet. If I was standing, I don't know, it probably looks like it's probably a good 50, 60 yards from the curb out to the back where this is going to be. So for those reasons, I see no reason to object. So on a vote of 3-0, the variance is granted. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for your time tonight. Okay, moving to the application from Mr. Evans. This is for a second driveway. The applicant did have two reasons for being here tonight, but has agreed to drop the challenge to the actions by the city, and is instead seeking just a variance so we can put a second driveway of 44 feet wide with an entrance on Balt Avenue. Discussion. Bob, we'll start with you first.
There doesn't seem to be any concern from the neighbors with respect to the driveway that's being asked, the special conditions of the property. It looks like there's already something existing there, and I would support this one as well.
Yeah, I agree. Since the neighbors don't have a problem with it, I don't see why I should have a problem. That's their decision in my view.
All right, in this case, since there was a structure there before, and there was a driveway, doesn't necessarily mean that you should compound the problem, because the old building is gone and the old driveway is kind of gone, but you can see the depression. But the old driveway in the building existed for quite some time without any evidence of complaints to the city. It gives Mr. Evans an opportunity to move a recreational vehicle off the street, so there's quality of life issues. The neighbors prefer that circumstance as opposed to the vehicle being on the street. It does give him, he's got sufficient space to do this, and it gives him, he's got an alternative that would not be afforded most people, but since he wants to take this step, I don't have any objection to it as well. So I would vote in favor of this variance as well. So Steve, your vote
I'm in favor,
is
too.
yes?
I'm in favor, sir.
Okay, and a vote of 3-0. Counselor, you have your need?
I think everyone's articulated their reasoning for it, and just so you're aware, the McLaughlin case in the Supreme Court says self-created harm isn't enough reason to deny a variance, and so you guys are free to not take into account that he's just done this.
Right.
And you're allowed to do that.
Okay,
That's fine.
very good. All right. Mr. Evans, thank you.
Thank
You're approved.
Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. All right. All right. Okay, all right, we're gonna go back into a hearing. So I'm gonna call the hearing to order. Ask everybody to please be quiet. I'm gonna call the hearing into order for the application filed by ONC Investments. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Mayor.
I'd like to make a presentation.
Thank you.
Again, I'm going to remind everybody, we're in a public hearing. We'll take testimony from the applicant. We'll hear public comment afterwards. And then after that, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond to the comments that they hear. And then we'll close out the public hearing and have a business meeting like we just had on the first two applications. So, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mayor. May I turn on the TV so that folks in the audience can see our power?
My alma mater is playing hockey at 9 o'clock tonight. So yeah, yes, we can turn it on. Rather like a hockey game.
You might be missing that, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to miss my game. That's all right.
On our power.
We need some help.
You okay?
Let me know when you get there, buddy.
Mayor.
Oh, there are no more chairs. The chief doesn't have it. Oh, that's all we have.
All right, where are we, where are we at with the presentation?
We had some connection issues, Mayor. We were up before, but took it down because of the two prior presentations. If you could give us a moment, I think we'll
Okay.
be moving here in a moment, I hope. All right. Not, we do have a backup plan. Mayor, if I may approach, I'd like to hand out the PowerPoint when we're bringing up the video so that folks can see what we're handing you. We probably put too much area, too much area. Nah, you're fine.
It should be input. Would be input, Joseph.
I didn't set it up originally.
I have no idea.
Help to set it up.
We've got a few more chairs we're gonna put, we're gonna try to put in the back or someplace, so a few more. can see it. These tables this way a little bit. Do you have any? Good, thank you.
Hey, I'm a difficulty with the PowerPoint. Is there anyone else? Here? On this side here?
Yes.
Mayor, I want to ask you a serious question as candidate for city council. What makes you think this is one bit right? We got people falling down in here, people out in the hallway. This is the problem in this town. This is not right, and imagine for this be tabled tonight. Nothing here is right. Look at these people, half of them can't even hear.
What'd you say?
This is what's wrong with this town. You run things through the people without them knowing what's going on. This hearing is wrong. I'm asking you to shut it down.
Victor, I'm not gonna engage you in conversation.
Well,
We
but
need-
you're
we need
gonna
to-
push this through with all these people sitting here. This is
Victor?
wrong.
Victor, you wanna run and you wanna win, you wanna support a municipal center that has modern technology and plenty of space for meetings like this? I'm all for you. You'll have my vote.
You had plenty of time to get a bigger room.
I didn't choose, okay? I
Well,
didn't choose.
apparently nobody did.
Okay, I'm done talking to you. You
I
done?
know you are.
Are
You're
you done?
done talking.
Are you
Anybody
done?
got something to
Are
say?
you done? Because if not, you can walk out the
Yeah,
door.
you can
Are
walk
you
out
done?
too.
Are you done? Are you
think
done?
I'm gonna answer you?
Are you done?
I don't know you shit. I'll shut up, but you leave me alone. Okay, big boy?
Keep talking.
This town's got a problem. You people should not be putting up with this. They should have a fixed place for you to sit and pay attention to what's
agree.
going on. How many votes I lose over it? It's wrong.
That's all we have.
Do you have any?
That's good enough. That's good enough. Good.
Do you have an
We're gonna
extra one?
pass it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
More of us can stay.
Oh, yeah.
Mayor, I think we're ready to proceed whenever you are, sir.
All right, if everybody,
Absolutely.
everybody in the back? Everybody in the hallway? Okay, thank you. All right, the hearing will proceed. Mr. Tucker, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, board members. My name is Sean Tucker. I represent the applicant this evening, ONC Investments. Here with me this evening is my client, George Valaskakis, Kevin Wilson, our architect, Mark Ziegler, our civil engineer. He also has a surveyor who may need to testify later, depending on comments we receive tonight. And Gary Burcham, who is our landscape architect. Mr. Ziegler, Mr. Burcham, and Mr. Wilson will be testifying as experts. So we'll be proffering them in that regard, as well a surveyor if necessary this evening. We are here tonight following a planning commission favorable recommendation for this project. That was also a public hearing that was duly advertised, as was this public hearing. That hearing happened approximately 2 months ago. And so this is the next step in the process, the land use process here in town, as set forth by your code, requiring a special exception before we can move forward any further with our site plan. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know what to do. I'm practically screaming already. So to orient everybody with the property, and unfortunately laser pointers do not work on these screens, so we're a little bit challenged here. My client is the owner of 702 and 706 Delaware Avenue. And those two parcels are slightly highlighted in white on this plan. And I'll point to them as best I can. Yes, sir. Those two there. Thank you. It's approximately an acre in size. These two parcels are being proposed for being combined, so the lot line would be lifted if this project is ultimately approved. Mayor, as you had mentioned earlier, we are proceeding tonight with you acting as a quasi judicial body, just like a judge and jury would. We're only going to ask you and other members of the board to follow the code, just like the quick check standards that were articulated by your city solicitor. There are specific standards tonight that we want to walk through that are in your code for these types of hearings. This is not a variance, as you know. This is a special exception, so there are separate rules. Unfortunately, they're somewhat lengthy. So I want to apologize in advance. I have to check those boxes, and it is going to take me a while. But I have to follow the code, and that's what I plan to do this evening, time permitting, for all of you. My client purchased one of these properties, actually both of these, one of these properties after it had been zoned commercial. I believe the other was also purchased before it was, or after it was zoned commercial. Both, so my point is, both of these properties are currently zoned commercial. That commercial zoning appears in your comprehensive development plan that was adopted years ago, and that is on your official zoning map currently. Put another way, these properties are not residential today. They are already zoned commercial. We're not here seeking a rezoning of any sort. The properties were bought with no restrictions. As you know or may know, when you sell property, you have the option of selling them subject to restrictions. In this case, none of the sellers sought any restriction on these properties prohibiting the use proposed, although that could have certainly been sought. It probably would have lowered the purchase price substantially, but it was not sought in this case. This is a relatively current aerial view of the same two properties. To the left corner, moving to the right, and then there's an office use on the far right that will remain. This property is also located directly across from the shopping center and the drugstore, and you can sort of get that orientation as you look at the roadway in front of the property. This is fronting on Delaware Street, of course, which is truly one of the gateways into the city. Now, some of the examples I wanted to touch on briefly to provide some context for everybody are other uses permitted on this property today without a Board of Adjustment approval being required. A hotel or motel is a use permitted today by right. Certainly you have to satisfy the code, but a special exception is not required, like it is for all residential, which is somewhat ironic, I think, but that is what the code says, and we are bound by your code.
So said differently, if the application was for a hotel or motel, a retail or service center, or a restaurant with outdoor seating, we would not be meeting.
That's correct. That is correct.
Go to planning, here's your plan, they get their approvals by right, they go build.
And that is because the property is already zoned commercial. So this is about tonight about a specific use that does require this hearing, but I do think it's important for context for everyone to understand that this property will be redeveloped at some point. there are uses that are permitted without the special hearing requirement. And as we will attempt to demonstrate through our presentation, we believe the use proposed this evening is certainly a more friendly alternative. For example, the height limit in this district is 45 feet. So a 45-foot hotel could be built on this site. You could have retail that includes a possible liquor store as a permitted use. I'm not saying my client's doing that, but that is an alternative. It's also permitted under retail and service, as are the restaurants. I don't think anybody would build a 45-foot restaurant or a retail and service, but certainly a hotel and motel is certainly a viable use at a location like this, especially given the traffic that I've heard about on Friday nights and Saturday nights heading to the beach. In fact, my family and I used to live in Old Newcastle on 3rd Street, Joe Toner's house. And so we are familiar with the weekends and how it gets a little busier, certainly on the weekends with some folks cutting through town. This is the site plan that was reviewed by the Planning Commission and blessed by them for us to move forward here tonight. Mr. Ziegler prepared this plan. And with your permission, I'd like to have him come up as a witness and have him answer some questions about this plan to better orient the board as well as the folks in the public.
Mr. Ziegler, a member of the bar?
He is not, he is a civil engineer.
And I'd ask Mr. our solicitor to swear him in.
Raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Not on, okay, that's part of the problem. So Mr. Ziegler, I ask you to also speak more loudly if you can. Mr. Ziegler, you heard me mention the height in this district, which is the DG commercial downtown gateway commercial district, that's 45 feet. Is that the correct height in the code?
That is correct.
Okay. And is this project at 45 feet?
This project will be, I believe, around 35 to 38 feet.
Okay. And so it's not built to the maximum height.
It is not.
Okay. Was there a time when you put together a concept plan for this same property and my client that was at or about the maximum 45 feet?
Yes,
And were there 4 stories on that plan?
it was a 4-story plan. It was 40 units or 40 apartments.
Okay. And did my client ask you to pull that back and reduce that density in height?
He did.
Okay. And did that lead us to the plan that we're looking at here?
It did.
Can you tell us how many apartments are proposed on your plan, sir?
This building has a 14,000 square foot footprint and the apartments is 32, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments.
1 and 2 bedroom apartments, and I'll
Correct.
just ask you to speak up so everybody can hear you, please. How many parking spots are proposed?
48.
And are any variances needed for this site in regard to parking or any other proposal on your plan?
No,
Now, it appears from your plan that the access point would be on 7th Street. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Are there current access points on Delaware Street today?
There are 2 points of ingress and egress along Delaware Street, right? There's flexible barriers out there that DelDOT installed, or the city of Newcastle installed, I assume DelDOT. But there are 2 points of access that are being eliminated.
Okay, and why is that?
Because Delaware Street has roughly 13 to 14,000 trips a day. It's considered a major street. And DelDOT, as well as the city, would want the access to be off the minor street, which is West 7th Street, which has far less traffic. And that is where the access is proposed, and we've already met with DelDOT. And they are supportive of where that entrance is located.
Okay. Can you briefly explain to the board why you want to have your access point on a street with less vehicle traffic per day than more vehicle traffic per day?
Safety is the quick answer, but in this case, it's all about safety, because if you go out there today, you will see flexible barriers, and it's right near a traffic signal. And it is not a desirable spot to have a major access point for a site. So where this, and we place the entrance furthest from the intersection also along Seventh Street. So safety was the overall design constraint on this project.
And when you say from the intersection, you mean the intersection of Delaware Street and Seventh Street?
Correct. Delaware Street and Seventh Street.
And you're referring to the distance you travel from the intersection south on Seventh Street when you say we put it at a further distance?
Right. We placed it along near the property line.
And does that enable people to brake more easily when they have a longer line of sight when they drive along the road?
It allows for, it gives a better sight triangle. You're further away from the intersection. It's just an overall much safer design than even what's out there today for the existing two dwellings.
Okay. Now, Mr. Ziegler, I introduced you as a civil engineer. Just for the record, can you share with the board how long you've practiced as a civil engineer and whether your firm also performs traffic analysis?
I've been practicing engineering for 35 years. And I'm the owner of McBride and Zabron. We do review traffic.
For efficiency, board members, I'd like to jump ahead in the presentation and longer. I think it'll save time tonight, if that's okay. Sure. I'm gonna jump ahead to slide 28. Unfortunately, the numbers don't appear on the screen, but they do appear on your handout.
They're in the lower right-hand corner.
Oh, you can, oh, there you, I can see it now. Thank you. So, Mr. Ziegler, in reviewing the traffic standards in the code, I want to reference 230-57B2 of the city code and the standard, which I will read, that we are supposed to, as the applicant, and this board acting as judge and jury, is supposed to consider the probable effects upon highway traffic and pedestrian movements and assure adequate access and circulation arrangements in order to protect major roads from undue congestion and hazard. Did your firm perform that analysis?
Yes, and DelDOT also performed that analysis. DelDOT actually has a plan. I think it's designated for 2024, where they're going to make because they want to make that intersection go into the shopping center across the street and also 7th Street. They're proposing a pedestrian crosswalks to make it safer for pedestrians. So they're proposing sidewalks, crosswalks, and our site, the owner's site's going to benefit from that project.
Okay. I'm going to jump ahead again, and then I'll come back to the standards. I think it's an important one, especially an important one, given the concerns we've heard over the past week. Let's talk about, if we may, traffic generation for a moment. Because I think some folks are certainly concerned about that, and I want to drill down into that so we have the facts. Multifamily housing, land use code 220. We have listed on this slide 32 apartment units, weekday trips 280. Can you tell us what that means?
That is the traffic in and out of the site generated by the 32 apartment units. That number is derived from the ITE traffic manual recognized by DelDOT and all other 50 states in the United States. So it's the weekday annual daily traffic.
Okay, now when you say weekday annual or daily traffic, do you mean over a 24-hour period?
Yes,
So 280 trips over a 24-hour period, is that correct?
that is correct.
And that is estimated based on standards used in traffic engineering.
That's correct.
Business hotel, assuming 48 rental units. How many trips does that same manual indicate should be expected for that permitted use?
291 trips.
And would you agree that's about 4% more than our client's project would be projected to generate?
Yes.
Okay, this next slide. High turnover restaurant, 5,000 square feet. 536 trips. This comes from that manual as well.
That came from land use code 932, the ITE manual.
And that would be a 91% increase, almost doubling the ADT that would come from our client's project if it was approved. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Medical dental office, 18,000 square feet, 3-story. 665 trips, same source,
Same source.
and that's about 138% increase.
Correct.
Liquor store, also a permitted use in commercial, correct?
Correct.
726 trips. Again, this would be over a full day, correct?
Correct.
Day and evening. 159% increase, is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm going to take you back, if I may, to standard. It's in the code 230-57 V2 for the record. I'm sorry, wrong standard. I haven't gotten to this one yet. So in looking at the permitted uses versus ones like the one we're seeking approval for tonight, which is just residential, multifamily dwelling. In your opinion, in your professional opinion, does our client's proposed use have less of an impact than those other uses that are permitted without a special use exception?
Yes, it has significantly less impact than a liquor store or a restaurant.
Now, have you, in designing this plan, have you taken steps in your design to assure adequate access, in your opinion?
Yes.
And is that done in part by the elimination of the two access points on Delaware Avenue and the location of the access on 7th Street, furthest from the intersection of Delaware Street and 7th Street?
Yes, again, we've eliminated two curb cuts near a traffic light with along a very busy street, Delaware Street, and we've taken it to a secondary street with far less traffic and it's way further away from the intersection. So it absolutely meets that requirement.
Okay, and then the section goes on to say circulation arrangements. Did you design this project in such a way that there would not be any dead end parking?
We left 45 feet so that people could make a U-turn out without getting stuck in the parking lot.
Okay, so is it your professional opinion that adequate circulation arrangements are incorporated in your plan?
Yes,
And do you believe your design protects major roads from undue congestion and hazard given the uses that are permitted in this district?
absolutely.
Okay. Do you believe that 7th Street, by the way, qualifies as a major road?
No,
How about Delaware Street?
Delaware Street is absolutely a major road as it connects to 273 and Ferry Tunnel.
Is that based on DelDOT's manual?
Yeah, all the traffic.
Now, there's also this concept of peak hour trips, right? There's ADT, what happens, average daily trips, which we just walked through. And then there's this idea of peak hour trips, right?
Correct.
And there's an AM and a PM peak. Can you explain to the board what that means?
So essentially, DelDOT, when we do a site plan, we have to look at traffic from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning and also from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. because that's when the roads are most congested. And so they are considered peak hours. And DelDOT wants to know what the impact of the traffic is on those roads at those critical hours.
And just for the record, when we look at the peak hour trips that would be generated from a use such as our clients, it is my understanding from your review of applicable codes that in the AM rush hour, there'd be approximately 33 trips.
Correct.
And in the PM rush hour, there would be one more trip, approximately 34 trips.
Correct.
So in the hours of operation, which are considered by most rush hour, AM and PM, this project is projected to produce 33 trips in the AM, 34 in the PM. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you take that into account in your design?
We did.
Thank you. I'm going to backtrack now, if I may. I then have Mr. Ziegler come back up and testify to that. And this is going to be slide 6 in your package. Mr. Ziegler, can you tell us what slide 6 depicts?
Slide 6 is a depiction of the site plan with the landscaping
The parking lot, it's colored, obviously, shows the building adjacent to Delaware Street. The site has an acreage of 1.02, but it's an overall view of the parking lot and the building as well as the landscape.
Okay. And was there a landscape architect that was engaged to prepare this landscape?
Yes, Gary Bertram,
Is he here to your right?
to my right.
All right, Mr. Bertram, could you introduce yourself for the record and your qualifications in Delaware as a landscape architect, please?
My name is Gary Bertram. I'm a registered landscape architect in Delaware. I've been in practice for 34 years here in the state. I was born and raised in the state, University of Delaware graduate, University of Virginia graduate. And
Any relation to our city building official?
I think I've heard that before, but I don't believe so.
Okay, all right,
Spelled differently.
okay.
Spelled differently.
Yes. Mr. Bertram, can you tell us if this is your landscaping design that we're looking at on slide 6, please?
Yes, it is. And what you're looking at is a fully compliant landscape plan with the ordinance.
Okay. And when you say fully compliant with the ordinance, can you give us a little bit of flesh on that? What does that mean that you did in preparing this plan?
Well, I looked through the entire ordinances of the town of Newcastle. And the ordinances with which we had to comply were basically a catch-all section of the downtown gateway district, which is, and I quote here, to create a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood commercial district and enhance the aesthetic appearance along streets, parking lots, and other pedestrian areas. That is basically the overall goal. The few stipulations that are included in that ordinance are that you accentuate building entrances, you provide shade trees at 40 feet on center, you provide street lighting or lighting at a maximum of 50 feet for adequate sidewalk illumination, and that you provide benches or other street furniture at appropriate locations. It also requires that we comply with 230-28G, the parking standards, which relate to the items in the back of the building off of where the parking lot is. And those again are,
And if I could just pause, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the back is really Delaware Street. Is that what you're referring to?
no, I'm referring to
Behind the parking.
Yeah.
Okay. So
behind the building.
So where that yellow line is, that's where you're focused now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's the parking lot in the rear, and the stipulations for parking lot landscaping were that it be visually screened from the street with either a 26-inch high solid brick wall or a combination of steel and ornamental fencing with evergreen hedge. That the interior landscaping constitute 10% of the interior, and that plan shows 10.29%. It also requires that there be a minimum of 1 shade tree per every 5 parking spots. And we do indeed have that. And that internal landscaping will have, the island shall be landscaped. And as you can see, we have that. We also added where the yellow line is.
Sorry to interrupt. Before you get there, let me ask you a follow-up question. When you initially prepared this plan, did you show fencing on it?
No,
Okay.
we added the fencing.
Okay, tell us if you know why that was done and who did it.
It was added by the client because he was concerned about the views into and out of the parking lot. You have to understand, when I do a plan, I work for my client and I say, what is the requirement? And then I put it on the plan. When I looked through the ordinances, I saw nothing on the downtown gateway district that really required any kind of physical, visual separation between adjacent properties and the parking lot. So the 6-foot high, 100% opaque fence that we are proposing along the south and a portion of the west property boundaries are all at the insistence of the property owner.
And is it your understanding that came about because of a meeting he had with the neighbors located directly behind him?
That's my understanding.
And so is it fair to describe this landscaping then as code plus, meaning it exceeds code because you've added, or our client has added, that 6 foot tall fence that is opaque?
Yes.
Is the lighting also included on your plan that's required by code? And if I may, Mayor, it might be easier if Mr. Bergstrom comes up, or Bertram comes up, just because of the laser issues.
Yeah, I brought the laser pointer, but apparently it doesn't work. Yes, this is the front of the Delaware Street. This is the front of the building. And the planting and the street trees are done in coordination with the fenestration of the building. And to the entrance here, the main entrance, we have 2 benches and light posts along the street.
Okay. And is it your opinion that your location of those lights satisfy code?
As far as I can tell, yes, it says at appropriate locations. And to me, an appropriate location is to provide benches out adjacent to the public sidewalk, near the entrance to the building. It also stipulates that the furnishings can be as requested by the town or whatever. And if that's something that you wouldn't want to change in any way, that could always be done, I suppose.
And that could be done as part of the site plan approval.
Absolutely.
What about lighting towards the neighbors in the rear, the 2 residential uses in the rear of this property? What's the closest lighting to those uses?
I have not been given a lighting plan. My understanding is that the lighting would be from the building. Am I correct in that? Yes, and so it would be from the building down, and the way that lighting is designed these days, I am not a lighting engineer, I do not do lighting plans. But the way lighting is designed these days is that they have the lights recessed within a cutoff so that the beam actually can be directed to certain locations and not bleed beyond that. And then in addition to that, having the fence, if the light is coming down and landing within the parking lot, then the fence is an additional barrier to any light that would bleed off the site.
Mr. Bergstrom, I appreciate you're not a lighting expert, but is it possible in your experience to put special shielding on lights to direct that light in such a way that it does not bleed on adjoining properties?
Yes.
For the record, I just want to say on behalf of my client will be installing those shieldings so that none of the light that would be produced, which is somewhat required by code, as Mr. Bergstrom explains, and needs to be lighting. So none of that lighting will migrate onto any of the residential properties behind us or otherwise. And I just want to drill down a little bit more into that buffer area because I think it's helpful. And just for the record, Mr. Bergstrom, this is the buffer area between our client's property and the residential uses behind that property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you walk us through just briefly a summary of the shrubbery types and how tall and or robust they will grow after they're installed?
Oh, these are evergreen shrubs that would be in compliance with your ordinance that would be maintained as a hedge of 26 inches. In addition to a metal fence, ornamental metal fence, that would be there as well. This area along here would be where the fence would run along the perimeter of the property. That would be a 6 foot high, 100% opaque fence that would act as a shield. These are large trees. They're river birches. These are large, relatively large flowering trees. They're hawthorns. What we have along here are some hollies. These are a large area of
hydrangea quercifolia, oak leaf hydrangea, I'm sorry. And along here are areas of, I believe these were, northern bayberry, which are semi-evergreen and get rather large. And planting in front of it includes smaller shrubs, which are, the Clethra elenifolia and beds of native, carex sedges. Most everything that I use on this plan is a native of either the mid-Atlantic or Delaware. So what we've done, the only place I haven't used those is along the street trees where I've complied with your list for street trees. And there weren't a whole lot of native options for that.
You have listed off-site trees and off-site evergreens. Can you explain what you're proposing there? Do those already exist?
They
Or are
already
replaced?
exist. They already
They're on my
exist.
property.
These,
Chestnuts, tree my dad planted.
these are hollies that already exist on the site, and that is just wanted to have that for reference.
So my client wouldn't need to trespass, for example, on his neighbors to the rear to install those plants. They exist today. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
In terms of height, I think that you answered almost all my questions, Mr. Berkshire, but in terms of height, about how high would you anticipate those trees growing in the rear, not the shrubberies, but the trees in relationship to the 6-foot fence?
The street trees out here, they're probably going to be 40 to 50 feet. These Betula nigras, the river birches, they'll probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50. And the smaller trees there, the Protagus, the hawthorns, they'll probably get somewhere around 25 feet or 30 feet or so at most.
And lastly, about how much open space is being preserved as part of this application?
Oh, I have not looked at that. I was 25.
I'll ask that, I'll ask Mr. Ziegler that question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Berkshire. Mr. Ziegler, can you answer the question regarding the percentage of open space, approximately?
25%.
Thank you. If I may, I'd like to move forward to, for a moment, the architectural drawings and ask our architect to please step forward and offer his name for the record and his background, please.
Sure. My name is Kevin Wilson. I am principal of Architectural Alliance. I'm a registered professional architect in Delaware, and I've been in business with Architectural Alliance for 35 years now.
And Mr. Wilson, I assume you prepared the exhibit we're showing, which is for the record number 15 in the PowerPoint?
Yes,
And this is the front elevation. Does that mean it's facing Delaware Street, or does that mean it's
Yes.
facing?
no, that's facing Delaware Street.
And in preparing this exhibit and also the one to the rear, I'm going to show right here, is that the rear perspective?
Yes, it is.
And the trees you're showing on the rear actually aren't going to be there, right?
No, that was really just to provide scale. We put a couple to the rendering. We put people and trees just so you can get a sense of scale.
But in the front, those are approximately where Mr. Bergstrom put his tree.
That's correct, yes.
Just to clear that up for the record. Now, in putting this design together, were there certain standards in the city's code that you had to adhere to?
Yes, we did. We followed the downtown gateway design standards.
Okay. And did you go through them carefully in putting this plan together?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and in your opinion, does your elevation plans, front and rear, and otherwise comply with the provisions for the DG Gateway District?
Yes, they do.
Without making you go through all 15 of them or so, unless the board would like, you just give us a flavor for some of the provisions.
Sure, of course. building character, that it generally is an appropriate massing and has external materials that are appropriate to the site, which we believe it does with brick and stucco.
And if I may pause you there, this is one of the street views that shows sort of the character of 7th Street.
Yes, that is.
And do you see the brick and I believe that's stucco in the area today?
Yes. Yes.
And did you take that into consideration?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Windows should be appropriate to the architectural style, materials and detailing, and should be proportioned vertically, which they are. Those are residential style, double hung windows. There's the roof should be encouraged to be gable or flat roof with decorative cornice line or parapet. We've opted for the flat roof with decorative cornice line and parapet. Facade articulation, because this is a long facade, this is broken up vertically and horizontally. Horizontally, we have a material break between the brick and the stucco on the lower level. Vertically, we have articulations with the balconies and with offsets in the structure itself to break down the massing. I think that covers generally the spirit of the design standards.
Okay, and again, just for the record, you went through them all and you addressed all of them in your design, in your opinion.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I would ask you to stay there. I have some follow-up questions. The board may have some questions for you as well. Mr. Ziegler, can I ask you to take a look at this exhibit and tell us what we're looking at here?
You're looking at the proposed improvements by DelDOT to make that intersection more pedestrian friendly.
When you say that intersection, you ferry cut off.
I'm sorry,
and
the ferry cutoff in Delaware Street intersection, correct?
There's a green circle around that intersection. Is that fair?
Right, there's a green, so they're gonna turn that area into a grassed area, and they're gonna divert some of the traffic that's going currently right parallel to the site now. And they're gonna line it up more with the through lane and the left turn lane into the shopping center, and then they're gonna turn. So yes,
And that green, I'll call it a green hump that you can see towards the center of the screen. Is that something that's called a traffic calming technique?
yes.
And how does that work, if you know?
What I can say is going back to what I said originally, right now out there's flexible barricades because of safety concerns. Because of traffic coming down up against the property. There's also a big utility pole there, a couple big utility poles, so they're trying to divert traffic, so it's centralized in one area, nice. Split the way it's currently today.
Okay, and you mentioned a DelDOT project. I'll let our clients speak a little bit more about that, but you know generally what that includes in terms of the crosswalks and enhancements thereof.
Yeah, you can see the crosswalk. First of all, there will be a sidewalk. We're gonna be proposing a 10-foot sidewalk in front of our project. That will tie into a 10-foot sidewalk, which extends through the bump out, the grass bump out to a crosswalk, an island that will then cross Delaware Street. And then another crosswalk across Ferry Cutoff.
Okay, and would you consider that an effort on our client's part to design something that is pedestrian oriented?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and with this design, in your opinion, when I say this design, I mean your design of the site and these DelDOT improvements enable folks to walk across, following signaling, of course, to the shopping center if they want.
Right. DelDOT, yeah, the DelDOT is making this a safer pedestrian intersection, and our site will tie into that. This pedestrian crossing, so the timing of our project lines up well with their project from a pedestrian safety standpoint.
Okay. And are you aware of any improvements to the railroad crossing? That's just a little bit to the, I guess that's really the southwest. As you travel along Delaware Street out of the town.
As far as sidewalk?
No, the railroad connection. Is there also a project you're aware of where they're improving that If you're not, that's
I'm not
okay.
sure, I'm not sure there's anything there.
I want to drill down into the pedestrian orientation a little bit more. Okay. So are you familiar with this picture?
I am,
And this is slide 34 for the record. And in the center, you see the site. Is that our client site that we're talking about tonight?
that's our client site, correct?
And there's several rings that go out. Did your office prepare this?
We prepared this exhibit just to monitor, just to determine how many bus stops were within a certain radii of our site.
Okay, and you, if you don't mind, stepping past Mr. Wilson, it might be helpful if you could, with the mayor's permission, of course, come on, and point to those bus stops.
So this is the site, this is Delaware Street, and there are two bus stops at Delaware Street and West Sixth Street, which are within 650 feet. Another two bus stops at Tremont and West Sixth Street. And then further, over 850 feet across from the shopping center, there are two. I actually had counted one bus stop. I didn't see the other bus stop. That's what, this was from a dark map. And then there's, 4 more bus stops, roughly 1,000 feet. And that's at South Street and West Sixth Street and South Street and Seventh Street.
Okay. And those three arrows, the blue arrows in the top left-hand corner, are they pointing to the head of a trail system or a longer trail system, including its head?
Yes,
And approximately how far is that trailhead from our client site?
I'm gonna say about 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet.
Okay, and if you wanted to walk to Delaware Park from our client site, now
Battery
how
Park?
far, I'm sorry,
Battery
I'm sorry, I had gambling in mind today.
Start walking now.
Probably not gonna walk there from here. Thank you, Mayor. Let's Battery Park, thank you, that was a test, Mr. Sigler. Approximately how far would you estimate the walk to be from our client's site to Battery Park?
Half a mile.
Maybe a little more? Half mile?
I'm not sure. Half a mile. Maybe 3 quarters.
Mr. Ziegler, the site has been examined for water connection. Is that fair? Is there water connection that we know of in terms of infrastructure available?
Drainage or water?
Water,
There's infrastructure, water and sanitary sewer.
okay. And what about drainage? Can you tell us about how you would handle stormwater management on a site like this compared to the way it exists today?
Well, currently, I would say we're gonna improve the drainage because right now the parking lot, the existing parking lots are elevated. So the rear properties or the residential properties to the south, there's ponding occurring there today. So we're gonna create catch basins and drain those properties and also tie into an underground storm tank system and ultimately tie into the drainage system in the railroad that drains to Broad Dyke Marsh.
Mr. Tucker, can you flip to a page that shows maybe an aerial? Or let me
Yes.
go to a different page so we can have a better idea of what was just explained.
Certainly.
That'll work. Next one. That one. All right, so one more time.
So right now, what exists today is there's, it's not shown here, but there's a dwelling here, the dwelling, 2 parking lots. The parking lots are elevated. And this area right here has a low-lying area. So what we're going to do is place a catch basin lower than these 2 properties to make sure that all the drainage that is currently ponding right here is going to be picked up, and then we're going to tie in to a storm sewer, which will tie into a storm sewer and tie into another storm sewer crossing Delaware Street, and ultimately drains into a swell adjacent to Norfolk, the Norfolk Railroad behind the shopping center.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. I may, Mayor, I'm gonna, again, just jump around a little bit. I think it'll be a little bit more efficient. For the record, this is a picture of your comp plan showing the existing land use map. It has been focused or zoomed in a bit. And just for the record, you can see that our client's two parcels are sort of centered with that block of blue. And you can see that red commercial designation. I just wanted to point out for your benefit and public's that you see a lot of red in that area, including the shopping center across the street. And the commercial use is embedded along that Route 9 or ferry cutoff corridor, which is not uncommon for a major road, which we will largely be facing, at least the front of the building would. Mr. Ziegler, could you comment on some of the other uses around us? Obviously, we're commercial. There's office, however, to our east. Is that fair? An office use?
There's an office use, and across the street, there's the commercial Walgreens. There's a liquor store, there's a Dollar General.
Okay, and then of course, there's residential and more internal to the city.
That's
Is that
correct.
fair?
That's correct. Behind, to the south, there's residential.
And would it be fair to say that our purely residential component use that we're proposing this evening fits in with other uses around us as a mixed use area?
Yeah. 100%.
Now, we're not proposing a commercial, right? Just to be clear. right?
No, we are not. We could propose, but we are not.
In fact, you can, with approval, put commercial and residential together.
That's right. You could do a mixed use, or you could do a standalone commercial use.
So our client could have, but did not, but could have sought residential with, let's say, a small restaurant on the first floor.
Yes.
Just bear with me one moment, board members. I'm just to make sure I hit all the boxes, so to speak. In looking at the downtown gateway, we also took into account this consolidation of parcels, which is encouraged. It's also encouraged in your comprehensive plan for infill. We took into account, and Mr. Ziegler already testified to this, the closing of the two curb cuts you see there on Delaware Avenue, and switching to a single curb cut, which is also encouraged. You see, reduce the number of existing or future driveways. That's right out of the downtown gateway district requirements. And we've achieved that with this plan we would submit. Regarding the impact, substantially injure or distract from uses of neighboring properties. You've heard testimony from Mr. Bergstrom about the landscaping as well as the opaque fencing to minimize that. Certainly not to substantially injure. In regard to the second factor related to serving the best interests of the city and the convenience of the community and the benefit of the public welfare, as some or all of you may know, the idea of the downtown gateway district is embedded in your comprehensive plan. And this was a vision by town's prior planner or prior company that did the planning for you at the time of the plan creation. This is your code's various sections that talk about and encourage this. In fact, many portions of 23057 incorporate language directly out of your comp plan. I would respectfully submit thus far the evidence is tracking and confirming that compliance per code. You will also see some letters, and if I could ask my assistant to hand them out to talk about supporting this project. One in particular from a former member of City Council who was around when that ordinance was adopted or thereabouts, and he talks about that consistency. That is, that this project was envisioned at the time of the adoption of the comp plan. It was adopted in law that this is exactly the type of use that folks were talking about at the time of the comp plan. You've heard Mr. Ziegler talk about the sewer and the water. I will proffer to the board that I spoke to the chief of the fire company today and also briefly to the chief of police about impact. We have designed the site thus far, but there's more detailed designs, of course, that have to be done when you reach the next phase. But our project was presented to the chief of the fire company, I believe it was Goodwill today. And he saw it as consistent with what they would expect in terms of all fire extinguishers, or excuse me, sprinkler system, check that box, as well as connections for the trucks to come up and pump if they had to for some reason. He did ask that we make sure we put in a 4-inch connection as opposed to a 2-inch. We literally got into that level of conversation. So I wanted to put on the record that we did talk to him and as well the chief of police. I believe the chief had some concerns certainly about traffic. Hopefully the testimony from our traffic engineer has helped address some of his concerns. So we followed 57B2 in terms of looking at these infrastructure requirements. Regarding public schools, we're not aware of any issue in that regard, except that, of course, Colonial is building more schools. If there is an impact fee required by law, we will pay that. But that is a pretty standard thing that we look at when we pose applications. In fact, we got into the public school impact fees for another project recently. And I'm just finishing up, just to make sure I didn't miss anything. One of the things that we wanted to do, we heard there was concern that some of our parking could bleed into 7th Street. Your code requires the parking that we're provided. We don't believe that will happen, but in the event it does, and remember, this is supposed to be a walkability project where you can walk and not have to drive every place. And as you can see, there's certainly commercial opportunities around to walk to. And there's certainly Battery Park to walk to, but for those folks who travel, they certainly go to work perhaps in the morning and come home in the evening. We took some pictures along 7th. This is one at 502. And there is some yellow curving where you're not supposed to park on the right that you can see. This is a picture at 502 on March 26th, 540, 549. And those are taken by my client, and he will offer some testimony in that regard here shortly. And then we'll wrap up if that's okay, and certainly answer any questions and would certainly ask for some rebuttal. But I wanted to show the board, in addition to Mr. Ziegler's testimony about compliance with the parking requirements of the code, there does appear to be parking available at various times in the evening when people would be coming home from work. Not required by code, but I thought relevant. And with that, if I could bring up my client and ask him some questions for the record, and I think we can wrap up. I appreciate everybody's patience. I know it's a long night.
I ask the solicitor to swear in. Please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Skakis, could you introduce yourself for the record? And am I pronouncing your name correctly? Right. Could you introduce yourself to the board and tell us what you do for a living?
My name is George Kalaskakis. I own 2 properties here for about 35 years. My parents owned and operated Portofino Pizza in town, and currently focused on real estate investment and have some properties that I maintain as well.
And if you could just speak up a little louder so everybody can hear you.
Sure.
And you've heard testimony tonight from Mr. Ziegler and others about 3-story apartment building. You're proposing with 32 units. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in weighing what to build on this site, why did you pick apartments?
Because of the strong demand.
And has that been documented in various places?
I have done some research, and I'd like to share that information with everyone tonight. Something I found as reported by the National Multifamily Housing Council and the National Apartment Association, as well as the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. Specifically for Delaware, it states that Delaware needs to build 830 new apartment homes each year to meet demand.
And have you discussed this project with any of your immediate neighbors?
Yes, with the neighbors that are attached to the property right behind it.
Are those two separate neighbors?
Two separate neighbors, correct?
And approximately when did you meet with them?
About 2 weeks ago.
And did they express concerns to you about this project at that time?
Yes.
Could you just give us a summary of what those concerns were and what you've done since then to attempt to address this?
Can you speak up, please?
Yes, the concerns that they had were parking lot lighting coming through, vehicle traffic lighting coming through at nighttime. So we added a fence for that. And also the coverage of the dumpster. We also covered up the dumpster with fencing, so that's not visible anymore. And I also wanted to say that we do have a lot of landscaping back there that was originally in the plan, but I mentioned that to them that would be a good buffer as well.
Okay, and is the fence that you heard about tonight, the 6-foot fence, something that was added by you based on those conversations?
Yes, it was.
Do you think, in your opinion, that this project will enhance the aesthetic appearance of the downtown gateway, and if so, why?
I think it's a massive improvement over what's there. I mean, you can see with the building picture that we had up there, we used a combination of real brick and stucco. We tried to bring in some of the divided lights, the decorative cornices to pull out some of that historic element in the town. So I think it's a beautiful addition to town. It's really going to brighten up the downtown gateway entrance.
And as part of your project, did you attend any of the town meetings where Delta talked about its various improvements that are intended for this area?
I did not attend the council meetings that spoke about that, but I was on the Transportation Advisory Board for the city of Newcastle. And that was one of the projects that they were talking about.
Okay, and did that include the railroad crossing improvements?
Yes.
Okay, can you just briefly describe your understanding of what that is?
They're going to redo the railroad tracks and the asphalt right there as well. And also they're going to look to provide a bump out in front of this property to basically slow down traffic coming into town. And also include some new crosswalks so people can access different points throughout town, the retail center and so forth.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to offer to the board this evening and the public?
I know there's a lot of backlash, but I think this is a huge improvement over what's currently there. I bought these parcels because the city had rezoned these parcels downtown gateway into encourage redevelopment. And this is why I bought them. And I feel like this is a perfect example of what should be going here. It's going to brighten up the town. It's going to bring some new energy into this part of town. I feel like it's going to bring some additional support for our local businesses. We've had 3 eateries closed this past year. And I also feel like it's going to help with that, fill the demand for housing that's there.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Board members, I didn't know if you had any questions. At this time, we would, after public comment, like to offer a rebuttal if necessary. But that completes our presentation for now.
All right, thank you. I think we do is people have been very patient, so I'd like to move to public comment at this point. But thank you very much. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Do you have any idea how big the building is next to it, how tall, just for a scale standpoint?
Which building is that?
Weissman's old.
I don't know. I don't know what his is.
I don't know.
I know the current building that's on the property, the current 3-story building, the white one, is about 30 to 35 feet high.
Okay, it's not much smaller than
No.
what you're putting in there.
No.
How'd you come up with the number 32?
Based upon maximizing the space, the available parking that I could put there to support the number of units.
Okay. The 48 backs out to the 32, at least 1.5, basically.
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, code is 1.5.
That's all.
No question. Thank you. We'll, go ahead and take public comment.
Thank you, thank you, board members.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take public comment now. I have a couple of requests. If you sent in a letter or an email, I'm going to read all those. I'm going to let you speak first, but I'm going to read all those afterwards. If you send something in, I prefer you just let me read what you wrote. If you do want to speak, I really don't want to have to reread then the same arguments that you made via email, please. So let's open it up to public comment. So if anybody has any questions or if they'd like to make any comments, just come here, identify yourself, your address, and
My name.
let me say,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna time anybody, but if it starts to sound like a speech, I see a lot of candidates for public office in here. If it looks more like a speech as opposed to this particular project, I'm gonna cut you off, but please, I prefer to give you the time you like, but let's keep the points succinct and to the point. Sir?
Mr. Mayor, excuse me, can you ask the people to please sign in on the sign-in sheet?
Yeah.
As well
Yeah.
as state their name and address.
My name's Bill Cannon. I'm speaking on behalf of my mom, Linda Cannon. We live at 703 Tremont Street, which is. This property here. You see it goes here, goes here. It literally goes straight across and down. Mom's been paying taxes on that for 66 years. Crossing all the T's and I's on all her checks. And everybody's been cashing them, so she does own it. If you look up 63, or if you look up 703 Tremont Street. With the code of, I guess, the deed of records of the county. That is the depth on it. And the picture of it. And. This is 703. And it says we own 150 feet, and he's saying we only owe 27 feet less. Oh, right, so here's mom's property. What he did is bought 3 properties. He bought this one, he bought this one, and he bought 200 feet of the railroad property and combined the railroad with this one. And he went up alongside mom's property, and then he went straight across this property line, cutting out. Which happens to be 27 feet, and I have the deed and all the receipts when mom purchased that piece of corner. And I have all that. I have a lawyer who couldn't make it tonight, and I can show you his information. I forwarded to Mr. Jeff, and I'm nervous as all heck.
Don't
Yeah.
be, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, mom's 87 years old. And I don't want to sell because I grew up there. Okay, I mean, that's my family home, and this would break her heart to see what's going on back there. I try to explain it to her. And another thing, excuse me, I understand what he's trying to do, and that's out of the way. But to do it on mom's property is not fair, and that's where he wants to put trash cans. That's our backyard, has been forever. Yeah. And we all know 110 degrees and trash cans from 32 families. It's going to be right there. And what else? Ooh. Like I said, I hired a lawyer. He can't be here tonight, but I hope you don't settle this tonight. I hope you give it some consideration so I can do what I need to do with George and his family with this property. I mean, I showed him where the property line was, and he said he would take care of it, and I found out somebody said I lost, but I didn't even know I was in a fight. Bill Cannon, Mom's name is Linda Cannon. Like I said, she was born on Fifth Street, raised in Shawtown, the oldest of 8, graduated from St. Peter, so she's always lived there. Always lived here. So, sorry. Thanks for listening and
Thank you. Appreciate your patience.
Thanks, Mr. Cannon.
Mayor, if people speak up, please, and you can't really hear too well back here.
I'm sorry.
Especially with their backs to it.
So
Yes.
would you like all these? I'm gonna give them to Kathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's 3 properties involved, not just.
Hello, my name is Paula Siskanik. My husband Lawrence and I live at 36 West 7th Street. We are the other adjoining property, and we did have that discussion with Georgia Stitt. I request, both of us in agreement, request that no decisions are made tonight until we finalize the following items. Number 1, the property dispute is to be settled. Number 2, that the River Edge development on Lukens Boulevard, which will significantly increase the number of apartments, which George states is in need, which, by the way, research says it's affordable housing, not housing that we're talking about here, 1 to 2 bedroom, 1,500, 2,000 per unit. Also, that an impact study is performed on the traffic on 7th Street. Now, there's a distinction between on 7th Street in terms of the fact that they never address is that it is a 2-way street that has parking on both sides where cars cannot necessarily, if they are a truck, a garbage truck, a utility, you cannot pass each other. So there is already a problem with the ability of 2-side parking and 2-way street. The second is to have an impact on the flood zone. They did not mention the flood zone. That is being built on the flood zone. What is being done is to raise that property. My understanding, George said something is to be done about it in order to meet those needs. So what will happen to the water table and to the impact of our block as well as the storm drains, because it is in the flood zone and being built on the flood zone. So the next is that new administration, no disrespect to you, Mr. Mayor, but you will not be here in 2 weeks when your term is up. We would like to see this be brought forward to the city council when it's being changed hands, okay? The next is also, they talk about more detailed plans. These are all sketches, and to be having an exemption made on the things that are not the details yet means we're making decisions on things that have not been finalized. As to the traffic, yes, it is a highly congested corner. It gets flooded. When there's rain, there is literally a river underneath the parked cars on both sides of the street. Nothing has been addressed about that, as well as it being that when they said 1.5, yes, that is in compliance with the DG zone. But we all well and know that 1.5 parking spaces means that there will be people being on our street. Okay, and that it will spill over to it. In addition, what the plans that got approved by city council to fix that corner of Ferry cutoff is they're cutting off 8th Street. So now all of a sudden that traffic is going to be routed around 7th Street. So that will have an impact on the traffic as well. Currently also, nobody pays attention to the no left turn lane. So we never talked about the fact that yes, they're supposed to only make a right turn, but nobody does that. And I can mention anybody in here has done that themselves, okay? Also, all the talk about traffic was a concern with Delaware Street, not 7th Street, okay? So we understand that it's not a state road, but we do know that in addition, that it is a 2-way street right now. So not only is this designed without regard to the traffic, the things that we want, please resolve those issues, but it is to the historic nature of our car. The esteemed Mr. Tucker did a fine job of showing his client's case, but most of it was conjecture in terms of what could have been there let us focus on what is being proposed and make your decision just on what's being proposed, please. Okay, better use of that property. And in light of the spirit of the downtown gateway, why not the River Edge, the River Plaza Shopping Center? Put an apartment building there so that it's a multi-use area. So that you don't have it butted up right against residential and spilling out. In addition, there's only one egress out of that. So we know that that's already going to be a problem. When you have a garbage truck coming in and coming out, there is a tight turn. You have cars parked across the street trying to get in and out. Now, let's imagine a fire truck that has to make that tight turn in one egress, okay? So that is a dangerous, at least for us, a safety issue, okay? As far as we're concerned, it really is about, our town and what it means to our town. That's like 32 more people on the street right up against our homes. So I appreciate that you consider that. Thank you.
Damn, I thought you were trying to kill my opening. First, I'd like to apologize to my actions in here earlier.
That's my
I turned around and I see my dear friend, Mr. Maggie. That's what upset me. I didn't mean to be, I get mad.
You didn't have to bring that up again, Victor.
Well, it hurt my feelings because it's on the floor. I come here tonight for the sole reason of opposing these apartment buildings on television. Bottom line is, you told the people of Newcastle that you were taking H Street. A lot of people were opposed to that. Myself, I believe that was past due. H Street should have been taken away a long time ago. But you can't walk across the railroad tracks 30 feet and build a 32-unit apartment building. Right now, we have 3 train wrecks in the last 2 weeks, and the trains have become a big issue. Talk with everyone. Where you're putting this building, you derail train, is going right through the front of it. There are things we have to look at. Pray to God it never happens. The bottom line is, this apartment building, if you look at it, it's not going to hold up. It's going to look worse than the Garrison in a couple of years, and that does not belong in the entry to point to an historical landmark. These projects belong in Newark, Middletown, and other places. They do not belong in the city of Newcastle. They're talking about running their drain waters into the ditch that runs parallel with the railroad tracks. I hope they plan on digging a whole ditch out from Delaware Street all the way to the police station or to the Bald Dyke, because the whole thing is filled up. It's never been done once. How they gonna run water in it? Where's it going to go? Back up on Delaware Street? Because it's not going to work. What they're trying to pose here is wrong. Okay, I know that the previous council put this comprehensive plan together that they was going to be this big super thing for the city of Newcastle, and it's not working. The people alone, when you guys looking back at me, you see all these people, they said no. You don't have to listen to their lawyer, him, or nobody else in this room. You listen to these people in this room. They don't want this in the entry point of their town. We'd rather deal with the penalties, okay? We don't want this in our town, especially, you're already filling the wetlands in. The water has nowhere to go. Now you're gonna take up more open space, you're gonna put a big building in the entry point to Newcastle. It is total ridiculous. You can't have it 2 ways. Like I said, you can't take this street and then walk 30 feet and build a 32-unit apartment building, regardless of what your comprehensive plan says. I listened to the lawyer. He told you all his legal points. I'm not worried about his legal points. The people don't want this apartment building in Newcastle City at the entry point, and I expect every one of you to not even entertain this and deny it. Please, and that's as a candidate for council. This is all wrong. Thank you.
Hi. Um, I'm a little bit nervous up here. My name is Sally Denton and I live on Second Street. And I am here to support the project. This property has sat vacant for many, many years. And I have seen it deteriorate for 20 years. Getting worse and worse, month by month and year by year. The town and the property deserve better than this. This would be done by replacing the building with a building that would enhance the town and also the property. We have had, as George mentioned, 3 restaurants closed in town just this year. More density would help to support our businesses and our restaurants. We also have a large demographic in the city of Newcastle that needs 1 floor living. And that would allow a lot of people that have lived in Newcastle forever to go to the apartment and spend the rest of their lives in Newcastle. It also would allow people, that people could stay in Newcastle. And it would also allow new people that would desire to live here and cannot afford the big houses, but have the desire to live in Newcastle, to live here and support the businesses and to support the town and the different activities that go on in the town. I also heard something tonight. I realized, but I didn't realize that the owners that sold this property could have put deed restrictions on the property. If they were so concerned, they should have done that. And they should have gone to all their neighbors and said that this project was going to be developed. I have watched it being cleared. I knew it was going to be developed, and I support the development. Our town just can't, these buildings have been rotting away for years. So I support this. And, you know, I'm sorry if I've offended anybody in the audience. I don't want to offend anybody. I love everybody in Newcastle. But this is a great project and it's a great opportunity for our town. And I hope that you do vote on it tonight.
I'm sorry, we're done.
No. So I hope you do vote on it tonight because it needs to move forward. Time is money. And a lot of money has been spent on it, not only buying the property and, you know, all this activity or the presentation tonight, everything costs money. And the more you hold something up, the more money it costs someone. I hope it goes forward. Thank you very much.
No. You want to take it out in the hallway, take it out in the hallway.
Oh, no, sorry.
Hi, my name's Alicia. I live at 702 Delaware Street currently, for the last 3.5 years. And me and my fiance have really enjoyed living there with our children because it is in walking distance of everything. So I think it would be very beneficial for other families to be able to have the same opportunity that we've been able to have while living there. It's a nice area to live. I mean, despite what other people say about the building, it's not falling apart or anything like that. And it's just a really great place to live and I endorse this.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tony Bassler. I reside at 209 Beamer's Landing. So I've been a resident of Newcastle my entire life. Last year, my landlord was forced to sell because of the housing market, which made me have to leave. I was there for 10 years. So I started searching, trying to find a house, trying to find an apartment. Nothing was available. I went to Beamer's Landing. I asked them, no, you know, we have a 50 people waiting list. I'm sorry. So I went to stay with my parents for a month with 2 children. I went back to Beamer's Landing a month later, walked in, just happened to know the woman that ran the office. So she bumped me ahead of everybody just so that I could stay around Newcastle where I grew up my entire life and I want to raise my children. I've worked around here for 18 years. I really think that these apartments would help the business. It is struggling a lot. And I know that from my paychecks. So, I just wanted to say I'm in support of it and I think it will be a great idea.
Other comments?
One more.
Mr. Cannon?
Try not to fall down.
We'll yield to the gentleman from Tremont Street.
Thank you.
Where the hell did you find that photographer that took those pictures? That's the widest street I ever saw on 7th Street. And this cars looked like Beatles. I mean, there were no cars there. Woo. That's what I want to bring up, the traffic.
Oh, is it Mr. Megan?
I live at 605 Tremont Street. I've lived there for 53 years. I've never seen 7th Street like those pictures. Never, ever seen that. Even when the street sweeper goes through, there's more traffic on there. And if you have two cars, one on each side parked, and somebody's coming down 7th Street, and I'm coming up, somebody's gonna stop. Because you just can't get two cars by there. There's been quite a few mirrors knocked off, cars scratched. That's a bad street. It's probably the narrowest two-way street in Newcastle because of the traffic parked on both sides of the street. And if you try to say you're only going to park on one side of the street, you'll have a hell of a meeting here.
Ted, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Ask you a question. For everybody, anybody that does not know, Mr. Megginson, longtime resident, a former member of city council. Ted, should 7th Street, I'm asking this, I don't have an opinion. I'm just curious on your opinion from living. Should 7th Street be a one-way?
We tried that when I was on council. And it worked pretty good.
Which
But-
direction? From Delaware Street towards south?
We made a mistake. We made the whole street all the way down to South Street one way. And we got an awful lot of feedback from 6th Street and the other streets because the traffic was using that street. I was talking to Mr. Barthel the other night and I said to him, maybe they ought to make it that one block one way. Because the whole, once you get past Tremont Street, the street gets wider.
Right.
I don't know why, but it gets wider.
That's the same issue on 9th, where I live on 9th. It's very narrow.
Right.
I live 200 West 9th, right where the Antonio's bar used to be, for all of you old timers. And it's quite narrow right there. But as soon as you cross the next, you get closer to the Helm and Deemer's Landing,
Right.
it's very wide.
Right. Once you get past Gray Street.
Correct.
Yeah. But that's, I don't know if that'll ever come up or not.
So, okay, but thank you. I appreciate, I didn't remember that we had attempted to try that at one point.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
tried it, but like I say, I think the big mistake was that we made it all the way up to South Street.
Okay.
And that, it just didn't work.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Oh, no, please, go ahead.
Hello, Barbara.
Hello, I'm Barbara Wright. I live at 123 West 7th Street, Leslie Manor. I agree with Ted. Where did they take those pictures? We have never seen that. Not, the street is always crowded from Fremont up. And when on a Friday afternoon, not from 4 to 6, why don't you try from 2:30 to 6 on a Friday night? Sometimes we can't even get out of the driveway because of traffic. And if 1.5 cars, parking spaces in this new development, there will be people parking past Tremont. So we are concerned about the parking and more traffic on our streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Mr. Cannon, I know you want to make another comment. Do you want to make another comment?
Yeah, we're in no hurry to vote today. Because the property that's right there, 604, is rented for a year, correct? Somebody's moving in, gonna live there a year, so they're not gonna be in no hurry to do any construction for at least a year if they're renting it. So there's no hurry to vote tonight, I don't think. That's.
Next comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Mike King. I feel obligated to speak briefly simply because I own one of the 3 shuttered restaurants here in town. I realize change is hard. And I realize I'm a resident and I haven't lived here for decades, but I come from a small town. So I get the emotion. But looking forward and also looking at the other properties this man has built in town and the quality of those products or those projects, I feel like this could be a win-win. The city would benefit, the tax base would benefit, the community would benefit. Certainly, our little business would have benefited, but it's a day late and a dollar short for us. But once again, I understand the emotions, but when I read that weekly, every week we talk about progress in this town and
Careful, the weekly sitting right here.
that's fine. That's
Yeah, I'm
fine.
not.
My defunct restaurant probably owes her a little bit of money, so.
A little bit.
35.
We talk about change and progress and the right kind of progress. Not maybe a subjecture, but if this man decides this is not worth the headache that he's getting, he has the ability to sell that property to whoever he wants. You know, I would ask, wouldn't you want a person that has roots here, developing something of quality versus someone that comes from God knows where and can build that hotel or can build that 5,000 square foot liquor store or whatever
Let me ask you this. You said you're in the restaurant business?
all my life?
Okay. So if this were a restaurant, okay, and I'm not trying to knock up, put a straw man, but if this was a restaurant. And if it was, you saw the footprint, okay, pretty sizable footprint, you could create a restaurant. If you had capacity for, I don't know, I'm gonna pick a number, 100 people, right? 100 guests. What kind of staffing is that? How many wait staff, how many people in the kitchen, how many busboys, hostess, manager on duty, bartenders, what, just without a single customer, how many people have to come to work?
I can speak to this without hard data, but the restaurant I built for my oldest son. My day job is I go to Philadelphia.
Right.
And I open new business for a large wholesaler. On a typical lunch shift, I see 7 cooks in a kitchen, 5 to 10 servers in the front, in the dining room, 2 managers. When you look at the evolution of pay for the service industry, those, you know what, it's regardless, because you're never going to be able to staff something. And the trend to restaurants is QSRs, larger footprint plus of the cost, but we're getting way off track. And I'm not qualified to speak for what you're asking.
Okay.
And I don't want to create an issue for anybody.
No, that's fine.
But I would support this project, and I live on a small street in Newcastle, so I understand the aggravation, but
I appreciate you taking.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So I think
Mr. Miller?
Oh, thank you. So.
Yeah, Rod Miller. I would much rather see personally, the gentleman develop the property with single family homes, either rehabbing the ones that are already there or building, however many could comfortably fit. I'm big on owner occupation. Nothing against people that rent. We've all rented at one time or another. I come from a town that was destroyed by Section 8 housing and chopping up properties into multiple unit rentals. It's happened all over the country. I like the fact that this place is in demand. I like that. I'm sad to hear people that, looking to rent, they can't find a place. Maybe I was wrong. I used to say, if you can't find an apartment in Newcastle, you're not looking hard enough, but maybe they're all filled up. I don't know. But, again, the higher your owner occupation percentage, just the better off you are. It's just a statistical fact. Okay. As far as some of the other options that were presented up there, I don't know. I guess they're possible. I have to believe that the 32-unit apartment building is going to generate a lot more income. I would guess, than the other ones. There's a liquor store right across the street. The restaurant, I used to work years ago in restaurant business. It's a tough business. Your chances of failure are extremely high. So I don't know. I could be wrong. I really can't see a restaurant going in there. But I speaking also just from the traffic standpoint, that's my initial gripe about this. We all know that intersection very well. I don't know exactly. I try to pay attention to what DelDOT, has in plan there. One thing I've learned, I'm critical of myself. I should be paying much more attention to what's been going on with the city's master plan and, all these other type of things. I just never anticipated something like this. Maybe I should have. I've probably been, sleeping at the wheel here. But at any rate, I was almost in 3 major accidents within the last year at that intersection, making a left, from Delaware, going out of town, from cars running the red light, zooming around there. And I called the police chief each time. He said they have a camera there. He seemed really upset about it. I said, Chief, my heart was going a mile a minute. I easily would have been killed if I had just gone with my green light and I hadn't noticed the guy zooming around the corner. Okay, so that happens. We all know people make an illegal left off of 7th Street all the time. I've seen that numerous times. Okay, I wrote a letter to the paper. I think I mentioned 6 traffic coming in 6 directions. I think technically it's like 9 different directions. Okay, I don't know that you can find a more dangerous and confusing intersection in town. Again, depending on whatever DelDOT has planned, in the future for that, it is just the traffic is nuts. Okay, I've heard good things about the developer. I have no doubt he has good intentions. As far as the comments, that a lot of money's already been spent. Well, again, with all due respect, that's not our concern, right? That was his choice. He saw an opportunity. He saw the city, the changes that were made and the possibilities that could go there. It looks to me like he picked, and I would do the same thing if I were him. Look like he picked the most financially advantageous one. Okay, but I want you to deny this. I think maybe more, probably better would just be to postpone it. Again, we've got a new council. We've got a lot of things changing in the town. Obviously, a lot of people are concerned about this. There's opinions, both ways. I don't live right there, but I drive there every single day. I'm already upset about the Mammoth project that may be going in on Lucan's Drive. I just want to know how much traffic can the city take? Okay, it just seems to me that there's just a terrible place to put a unit of this size. I would much rather see single family homes in there. I don't know what the latest stats are. When I first moved here, it was like 61% to 39 homeowners versus renters, which I don't think is very good. It's way better than the town I come from, but it's still not that good. And I'm not really, I don't agree with the trends, what they're talking about in the future, that we're all going to rent, nobody's going to own anything. I think people need the desire to own homes. Not everybody can, not everybody wants to. If people want to rent here and they find it tough to get in, I'm sorry about that, but I like the idea of a town that is in demand. And again, the more apartments you put up, the more people you're putting in who are typically, I'm not trying to say, people that rent are no good. Obviously, that's.
Thank you, because you're talking to one.
That's not true at all. That's not what I'm saying. Okay, what I'm saying is, generally speaking, people that rent are transients. They tend to be younger people. They come and they go, and there may be an immediate positive impact, but long-term, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, what's going to happen with this property? Okay, I mean, things could change an awful lot, but once it's put in, it's there forever, right? Much rather see 3 or 4 single-family homes go in there.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mike D'Alessandro. I live on 607 Piedmont Street. And for the past, I don't know, 5-6 years, I've been having a problem parking my vehicle next to my house. I always have to park a block up or my wife, she got to walk a block. And something else, my vehicle got hit two times sitting in front of my house. Because somebody hit the truck, and then one night I was lucky, Newcastle officer was right behind the guy, and I got my truck fixed, otherwise it would have been on me. The problem is we got a barber shop that's on the street, usually park in front of my house. We have a beauty shop that's on there. These people need parking, and where are they gonna park? Are they gonna park in front of my house or my neighbor next door? The problem is the parking on 7th Street. It's not good. And then in the summer, you cannot cross the street between 5 and 6 o'clock at night because all the people go to the beach and they take 7th Street. It's unbelievable.
No, I'm sympathetic. I lived at 300 Delaware Street for the better part of a decade, and on a Friday, from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon until about 6:30, 7 o'clock, it's a stream of license plates from New York and New Jersey. Yep, understand. Same on 6th. Yep. We have a larger transportation issue for sure.
It's pretty bad when you wake up in the morning and you find your vehicle smashed up, and what happened? Who did it?
Was it a pickup truck? Was it Ted Megginson's pickup truck?
No.
Just checking. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Other comments, please?
Anyone else? Going up there? Yeah. Wasn't planning on talking, but listening to everybody against the plan.
Go ahead, sign in.
Not getting glasses on. I just want to say, back all them, the people of what they've said. And me personally, I'm not affected by it. I'm affected by the traffic, which is a mess, like everybody said. I live at 26 Edgewood Drive, and it's like a mile really outside of the city, well, historic Newcastle. But, I do a lot of work in the city of Newcastle in the historic part. And it's even my neighborhood. I live down off Route 9, a mile outside. I have to wait now to get out of my own neighborhood. I grew up there my whole life, and it's never been this bad when I went out of my neighborhood and I have to wait and wait and wait. And like, someone mentioned the other project they want to do, that's terrible too. But, as these guys at 7th Street, we're going to close 8th Street, and like for me personally, when I'm coming into Newcastle, if I see 6th Street getting backed up, I go down to the light by Portos and make a left and go up 7th. I mean, I feel sorry, for the people that comes through, and like people who know Newcastle, their whole life, this is not what they want. I mean, this wasn't what was for historic Newcastle. I mean, you're supposed to keep it intact, and it's not being intact anymore. And, add something like this, and we have apartments, that they go up down 7th Street, and I hear there's going to be more apartments going up down 7th Street. It's not, it's not the city I knew when I was a kid, so, I'm against it. So that's all I really have to say.
My name's Eric Frederick, and I live at 102 West 7th Street. And it's a residential street, and I think when it was first built, the street matches the the buildings that are on there as a residential street. I think if you were to design a city with hotels, you would have had a bigger street to handle the traffic. The wide angle picture was misleading. It looked like it was a large street where you could park on both sides of the street and then have two-way traffic. And that's not really true. People park in their driveways because it's difficult to navigate when people are parked on both sides of the street. And that corner up there at Delaware and 7th is really difficult. I don't know if anyone has driven through there, but you have to move over to let someone through. You can't get 2 lanes of traffic with cars parked on the side. And it feels like a Clint Eastwood episode where you play chicken, who's gonna move over first? And it's very difficult. So I'm against it because of the traffic. The street wasn't designed for that type of traffic to be a main street. And I think we should have a traffic study done on that side, the Delaware 7th Street side, to really look at that traffic and the overflow parking. We talked about how many parking spaces there are. And then there's a property dispute. So let's say it doesn't go well and the parking lot's smaller. Who do you know that has an apartment with not 2 cars? Everybody has their own car. And so the volume of cars is going to have an overflow, and that overflow is going to go up and down the street, and that's going to exacerbate the traffic situation. So it'd really be nice if we could put a hold on this and do some sort of traffic study that to not do wide angle pictures, but to actually look at what can be done there. That's all. Thank you.
This one's fine.
Oh, it's mine up there.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. How you doing? Been a process. Pete Toner, 603 Delaware Street. Lived at 603 Delaware Street for 53 years. You hear talk about the Pompeii like it was yesterday. I've never seen the Pompeii. So it's older than 53 years since that building was anything. It was the Newcastle Medical Center from 67 to 94, just for the room to know. I look around the room, I see guys that, like myself, buy old houses and renovate them. Now, I think if I bought my house and I want to renovate it and I want to rent it out, I should be allowed to do that. And as long as it's legal within the zoning, I should be able to do it. I'm horrified for George. George is a friend of mine for 40+ years. I ate the first slice of pizza in his family's restaurant, and all of you have eaten in his restaurant. You're full of it if you say you didn't. And this guy that sold him the land, is he here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you sold him the land and now you don't like what he's doing with it. But you don't like what he's doing with it. But this is still America.
Just the size.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He should be allowed to develop it.
Folks.
He should be allowed to develop it. I'm horrified for George.
If it was his property.
Okay, folks, it's not an open debate.
Thank you,
One
sorry.
person at a time, one person at a time.
I have friends on both sides of this issue. I really do. I feel horrible. I live at Sixth and Delaware, so when they tell me the traffic problems that they have on Seventh, who are you telling? It's bumper to bumper every Friday at my house. Come sit on my porch. I'll share a soda with you. So you're not telling me anything I don't know. I hope that you guys have all done your due diligence. I hope that you've all looked into the traffic and you've looked into the impact studies, and I'm sure that George has done all that. But George's reputation is he takes dilapidated properties and he turns them into something of value. Those two buildings haven't been anything in my life except an eyesore, and he's going to turn it into something nice. That's all. Now, if all of you are here to fight development, where were you at Deemer's Landing? Where were you at the Helm? Where were you at the Garrison? Because this is nothing like that. And if you're pissed now, and you have every right to be pissed right now, I want you all pissed right now, but not over this project. Get pissed over Midori's project. Get pissed over the project behind the fiber mill. Get pissed off at Cirillo's apartments. Get pissed off at every other one. But this isn't the one. This is one of our own who has fed all of you. His shopping center is where all of you shop. And he's trying to do something nice for the neighborhood. That's the reality of it. So I apologize if I've stepped on anyone's feet. But like I said, I look around the room and I see guys that have made money on properties here. I see guys that have bought properties and built homes on so that they could live in them. That's all that this is. If you buy a piece of property and it's legal and it's zoned, you should be able to build it. Thank you all for your time.
No.
Wait a minute.
Take it out in the hall. Take it out in the hall.
Come on outside there.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Yes, come on forward, please.
Sorry.
It's okay.
My name is Jackie Nuts Frederick. I just wanted to comment on what Mr. Turner said. He lives on Sixth Street, but I have a question. Is Sixth Street a state street?
It's a state road.
Okay, Seventh Street is not.
Correct.
And just piggybacking what everybody else said, if you're gonna have that increased traffic coming down, we need to do a traffic study at least. I know what Mr. Tucker said about the traffic study, but when we looked at the paperwork at the studies, there was no traffic study done on Seventh Street between Delaware Street and South Street. And if you live on Seventh Street, which I do, 102 West Seventh Street, I appreciate people who think, who say that we need to have progress. I understand that. The young woman that says she lives on Second Street, but she's not going to be affected by all the traffic that's going to be on Seventh Street. It's a narrow street, particularly between Delaware Street and Tremont Street. And it's very difficult to get through, like my husband said. And it's not wide like Delaware Street is, or Sixth Street. It's not a state street. Even South Street, I believe, is a state street. Seventh Street is. So an impact study would be very, very useful before making a decision. Thank you.
All right, is there any other?
I'd like to say one thing, if I could, please, Mayor. Let's just sign this again. I feel Mr. Toner's speech was very immature, for number one. There was multiple people that attended meetings and all about all these properties that they want to build up into apartment buildings. The entire Southern Gateway. They're taking your SPCA. First thing you people ever had that you liked, they took it away from you. They're getting ready to tear the Buy Right liquor store down on South 7th Street to build another 154 units. There's been so many people that have attended these meetings and are not being listened to. We are never listened to, regardless of what we go for. 3 or 4 people said how we're all going to live, whether we like it or not. And I just feel that Mr. Toner's speech was very immature to come in here and say that nobody cared about the Burgess and Elijah's, Mr. Midori's property, any of us. Because if I was on council, number one, these people have been forced for decades to look at these properties. They wouldn't touch these properties. All they be doing in these properties, if I was on council, is cleaning them up. Clean them up. Thank you.
All right, we've got some.
Bullshit.
We got some comments that I'm going to read into the record. And then we're going to adjourn the hearing. I'm sorry, we're going to do a rebuttal too, but let me read these into the record. Then we're going to have the applicant respond to what they have heard. But before we do any of that, I need to use the restroom. So we're going to take it. I promise to make this very fast. So we'll take a 1-minute recess.
You think head fell over coming back door?
Like build on your property, right? Huh? Ease them out. Huh? Ease them out. Got a whole army. Do you? Yeah. So that you're
Mom's school is down here, goes that way, it's 27 foot from where he's marked, back that way. Here's look. He connected to his side. This bomb, right? Between those parts. I can actually see it off the back. He has it, this angle. So, because he bought the first property, he bought it when he heard these. The second one, he bought the railroad property. But he found the three. He had this one, this one, this one. And then he connected the line right from there. I cut out mom's. We got that. He told me if you look up, that's the printout I got. I want to see them.
We don't think that. But they understand. They just don't like it. Never been to one of these meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cold, isn't it? That's what I like. But I got it. I got it. Well, those will build wood, they're going to tear down, the old license, with build wood. Well, but I grabbed that.
Restaurant Newcastle.
That's where the meeting ought to be.
Yeah, right.
That's where the meeting, I'm just saying. First time I've ever been to one. Here's our betting on.
On in, have a seat. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's indulgence. All right. Let me read the public comments that have come in. Ms. Wyrick, I'm going to read these off. You're going to check them off to make sure I've not missed anything. Okay, all right. So I've got a few, you might have to see, it's gonna take another minute. I've got a few. These came in and I wanna share. I thank you for those who commented. I'm gonna read them all. I don't respond, and the reason I don't respond, I should maybe even have just said I acknowledge, but we have to be very, very careful. I don't know if anybody's been blind copied on these, if you've sent it to other people. We are not supposed to talk about anything before these meetings, so I don't even run the risk of responding. I got them, I read them, I reread them, think about them, appreciate it, but that's why if you didn't get a response, it's because we have to be very careful. Members of council have the same issue, cannot be communicating back and forth in any way, shape, or form because it gets you in trouble. So that's so I just want to just say that if you didn't get a response from me, it's not out of ill will, it's out of just being careful. I'm going to read these. They came in over the last couple of weeks. I don't know what was communicated a couple of months ago to the Planning Commission, because this was on their they had public meetings about this as well. And the 9 members of the Planning Commission also took testimony, heard about this, and drew their own conclusions, which moved this project here. And I'll ask Mr. Rogers to comment on that process and findings. So let me read these real quick as best I can. This is from Frank Moriarty. Dear Mayor Quaranta, as you are aware, the Board of Adjustment hearing this week will address a special exception for a 3-story, 30-plus apartment building proposed at 702 and 706 Delaware Street Most residents in this area only became aware of this plan with the posting of the Board of Adjustment meeting signs within the last week. The presence of those signs has reverberated in negative fashion throughout the entire area, from Shawtown into the historic district, something I know from my own reaction, as well as from having spoken with residents in those locations. An immediate logistical concern of this development is the 48-car parking lot component. Traffic can exit from this lot in only two ways, either onto Delaware Street at its highly congested traffic light intersection by Walgreens, or onto 7th Street. 7th Street already shoulders much of Newcastle's traffic burden, perhaps is rivaled only by 6th Street. Both streets are always highly traveled, and anyone who spends much time in Newcastle discovers that when the shore communities are a destination, or when a major accident on one of the main traffic arteries occurs, traffic on both streets is likely to be at a standstill. This has been an ongoing concern, as I learned through my participation in the WMAPCO City of Newcastle Transportation Planning Advisory Committee. The goal there was to ease traffic congestion in the area bordering the historic district, and not increase the vehicle count. However, it's also important to view this at a higher level than the logistics of an immediate neighborhood. Having also spent 2 years in the Newcastle Community Partnership, I know that an ongoing regional concern is the front door of our city's historic area, now formalized as the downtown gateway zone. Funds have been directed toward vibrant new signage and landscaping to try to make an appealing first impression upon tourists and travelers. A 3-story apartment building plopped down at what actually is the front door of Delaware Street does not sync with the goals of welcoming people to the downtown historic area. The fact that at the December 19, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, member Cynthia Batty felt the need not once but twice to express her concerns over the appearance of this development speaks to the issue. I am not a resident of Newcastle who wants to close the borders to outsiders. I've spoken with numerous business owners who share my view that making Delaware Street a more vibrant and welcoming entity can benefit us all. I hope to see the David Finney / Booth House finally converted into a sustainable operation, and I'm excited to find the huge Victorian at 5th and South taking its steps toward becoming a bed and breakfast. And I don't mind the plan for apartment construction in the more suitable, undeveloped, light industrial commercial areas along Lucan's Drive. This Delaware Street apartment building proposal, however, is one that objectively is better left fulfilled. We strongly oppose the granting of the special exception. Respectfully, Leanne and Frank Moriarty. Next one. This is from Kathy Lawson-Iannone. Hello, I'm writing to express my concerns about the new proposal of an apartment complex coming to town. The writer, along with many concerned folks who reside in Newcastle, cannot fathom the mere thought of the congestion that this will impose on our quaint neighborhood. The red light as you enter town is already problematic. So with 35 apartments that will add an estimated 70 more vehicles, the problem will be amplified. And not to mention the excess traffic on side streets. The hometown feel is being relinquished. Perhaps a few quaint shops will add to a hometown feel we all want and will add to the existing charm of historic Newcastle. I relocated here from Maryland because of the charm, Battery Park, and the beauty of the town. The last thing the town needs is unnecessary traffic, buildings that diminish the character and charm of our town. I, along with my husband and the rest of the concerned residents, are and will be opposing this proposal. Respectfully, Kathy Iannone. Dear Board of Adjustment members, I am writing in support of the special exception for the multifamily project proposed by Mr. Veltzakis. There are many reasons to approve this application, and here are some of them. One, there is an extreme housing shortage in Delaware and the United States. New home construction, single family and multifamily, is not keeping up with new household formation. As long as this trend continues, the cost of housing will continue to increase for everyone. Projects that create more housing units are sorely needed. 2, renters in Newcastle area become homeowners in Newcastle. I have sold many houses to people who started out as renters in our fine city and then decided to purchase in Newcastle when they were ready to buy. This demand will help to maintain our property values in Newcastle. 3, the converse will also be true. I think this would be a good destination for some of our older residents who can't handle the steps in their home, but they do want to leave, but they don't want to leave old Newcastle. The location will allow them to walk to the shops in the River Plaza and walk downtown. 4, the additional residents in this project will support our local businesses. A thriving business district is vital to keeping Newcastle as a desirable place to live. 5, in my opinion, Mr. Valtsakis has been a responsible developer. He did a fantastic job with the old Radiator Shop, and River Plaza is well maintained and always looks good. I'd rather have him develop this project instead of selling the property out to an out of city or out of state developer. Number 6, I think this project would be better for the city than some of the other uses allowed in the downtown gateway zoning. The comprehensive plan targets these properties for redevelopment. The 2 current buildings are not an attractive entrance to our city. I, for one, would not like to see a hotel motel in that location, which is allowed. Something will be built at this location, and I think multi-family use is appropriate. I am a real estate broker, but I do not have any financial interest in this project. I don't list rental property, so I will not be listing the units for rent if this project is approved. Thank you for allowing me to submit my comments. Sincerely, Chris Cashman. To the Board of Adjustment, regarding the 702 and 706 Delaware Street development in Newcastle, I'm writing in support of the zoning variance for this project. I've seen the proposed front elevation in the site plan. I agree with the use of this space, and it will certainly be an improvement over the existing buildings which have been neglected. I would like to say that the town should have a master plan, as there are several other potential development opportunities in the immediate area. Without a plan, these areas could be developed in ways that could detract from the charm and authenticity of this beautiful old town. Sincere, thank you, Susan Hager, 106 East 3rd Street. I will say parenthetically, when I was on the Planning Commission, and I got no support for this, I talked openly about master planning this entire area. When I was on City Council from 2017 to 2019, I raised it again, and I got no support from anybody because this was going to happen. So too will something happen to what was pizza history and recently Chili's. So too will happen to something that is the beauty salon and the barber shop. Somebody needs to think about this holistically. I've been talking about it and have gotten nowhere. And none of you who live in the area raised your hand to go, you're right. You're right. So here we are. This was inevitable. It is my understanding you will consider a zoning adjustment to allow an apartment building to be placed on the lots for 702 and 706 located in the downtown gateway area. In addition, I understand that the Planning Commission has recommended this change as well. As a downtown business owner, this can bring more people into our area to utilize our restaurants and shops. This is entirely consistent with the Downtown Gateway Initiative of the Planning and the Planning Commission and the City of Newcastle for many years. Please approve the variance and let this project proceed. Thank you, Jan Henyon, 27 West 6th Street, Cobblestone Antiques. To the Board of Adjustment, it is my understanding that you will consider a zoning adjustment to allow an apartment building to be placed on lots at the above location, which are located in the downtown gateway area, and that the Planning Commission has recommended this change. I am writing to say that I believe this is beneficial. It's a beneficial opportunity for the City of Newcastle to correct the derelict buildings which are currently in those places with a beautiful new building. This is entirely consistent with the Downtown Gateway Initiative and the city's plan for many years now. It will bring people into the downtown to use our restaurants and shops and express vibrancy and optimism for our city. Please approve the variance. Thank you. Aaron Vetterman, 206 Delaware Street. Duplicate. This is somebody who already spoke tonight. This one is already commented. I'm going to read Ms. Metz's comments because this is different than what she spoke about. Members of the Adjustment Committee, this letter is to address our concerns regarding the proposed 32-unit apartment complex and adjacent parking lots to be built on parcel 702 and 706 at the northwest corner of 7th and Delaware Streets. We reside at 102 West 7th Street and have lived here since 2012. I'm a third-generation Newcastle resident, member of the Board of Health, with deep roots in the community and a commitment to the best interests of its citizens. We have two major concerns regarding this plan: traffic issues and conflicts with the zoning ordinance in the downtown Gateway District, including the conditions governing special exceptions. We are aware that there was a traffic study conducted last year for a portion of 7th Street and South Streets. However, we could not find a traffic study for these 3 blocks of 7th Street between South and Delaware Streets, which is the portion of the street that will be most affected by this plan. Has a traffic study been conducted for these 3 blocks and Ferry Cutoff specifically to examine the potential effects of the influx of residential traffic that this apartment complex will add? 7th Street is narrow. The specific block in question between Tremont and Delaware Street is especially so. There is also the question of the traffic issues already present at Ferry Cutoff, Chestnut Street, and Delaware Street, and whether they will be exacerbated by such large increase in residents. Traffic issues only increase in the summer with beach traffic congesting the town and creating a bottleneck at the intersection of 7th and South Streets, where only 3 of 4 directions of traffic have stop signs. We strongly believe a traffic study is necessary to determine the potential impact of that many more vehicles, the possible need for overflow street parking for apartment residents, and whether service and emergency vehicles will still have ample access. Regarding our second concern, we believe the proposed project does not adhere to the section of the zoning ordinance regarding special exceptions to the requirements of the downtown Gateway District. These are the specific subsections we believe are in conflict. 1, determine that the proposal will not substantially injure or detract from the character of the neighborhood. Historic Newcastle prides itself on its charm, a 3-story apartment building at a corner which many visitors will enter the city will detract from that aesthetic. 2, consider the probable effect upon highway traffic and pedestrian movements and assure that adequate access and circulation arrangements in order to protect major roads from undue congestion and hazard. The increase in traffic that 32 apartments will bring to this already crowded intersection will certainly have a deleterious effect on traffic flow, but also on pedestrian movements. There is a pedestrian crosswalk at Chestnut and Delaware Streets to enter and exit the Ferry Cutoff Shopping Center, but there is not one to cross Delaware towards 7th Street. Increased traffic here will raise the already present risk to pedestrians. This in addition to the aforementioned traffic concerns on 7th Street itself. We hope members of the committee will seriously consider these matters, which will negatively affect residents of 7th Street as well as the larger historic Newcastle community. Thank you for your time. As residents of the city of Newcastle, not specifically 7th Street, we would like to express our concerns in opposition to the proposed development of an apartment complex on Delaware Street. Our home on 7th Street was newly constructed less than 3 years ago. We were surprised to find the street heavily traveled, especially in the spring and summer. There is sometimes an endless trail of cars, trucks, tractor trailers causing a backup of traffic as well as an increase in noise, auto fuel emission. We many times have to wait for a pause in traffic or a courteous driver to let us out of our driveway. We believe a 32-unit apartment complex will increase the traffic and make an already problematic situation worse. Aside from our own personal inconvenience, we would like for you to seriously consider the negative effect this proposed construction will have on the entire historic area of Newcastle and its residents. Apartment buildings have been constructed in and around the city, and there is ample empty apartments that remain available. The placement of this new apartment building will not be in keeping with the historic character of the city, and it is likely to strain not only the ambiance of what the historic area is, what it is about, but also its resources. Newcastle can benefit from some growth within the city, growth that promotes an increase in revenue to local businesses by drawing tourists and visitors to the area. A permanent housing project which will be located, which is essentially the entrance to our town, is not the answer to growth within the city of Newcastle. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thomas G. Rash, Donna Susie Rash, 104 West 7. I think this might be the last one. I don't know if you guys have any that I will have not read, but if you've got something separately, some people.
No, you got
Okay. Members, I'm the owner of 208 Delaware Street, and part owner of 202 and 204 Delaware Street, and have been involved in the downtown historic district for 25 years. My mixed-use properties are in the historic commerce district and are maintained to historic area commission standards. My tenants are important members of the community. I'd like to point out that the proposed project for 702 and 706 Delaware Street is not in the historic district and is across from the commercial properties, which are not remotely historic in character. The proposed apartments are more attractive than the 3 previously approved and built complexes on the south side of the city. The 2 existing buildings are not historically significant. I'd also like to point out that behind these structures is a virtual sea of asphalt with no landscaping or any redeeming quality, certainly not an asset to the community. The proposal includes serious landscaping and will be considerably more attractive than the property as it exists. Contrary to the opinion of the opponents, apartment dwellers are not second-class citizens. They contribute to the city's success and provide support for all local businesses. The project has merit and should be approved. Sincerely, G. Douglas Lovett. Sorry, there is another one. Yep. But wait, there's more. All right. Mr. Mayor and Administrator, I email you in support of the applicant's project concept at the above referenced address. As a reminder of history, in 2003, 2004, every region of our community met extensively with KCI, the city's planner at the time, to create a vibrant, comprehensive plan that was adopted and passed unanimously by that council, where I served as council president. The essence of this plan was to extend, update, and blend the architectural elements of the historic area to the entrances of the city center, provide for a diverse commercial and housing mix, and provide a mechanism for positive redevelopment. A later council developed the DG zoning classification and codified the vision above. Comprehensive plans were further updated and ratified by following the councils every 5 years or 10 years in accordance with state law, and all supported the DG zoning classification and the redevelopment intent of the code. While it may take years for the stars to align, for projects to materialize, typically caused by demographic shifts, consumer behavior, economic aspects such as cost of capital and other issues, we are finally ready, with skill and resources of the applicant, to experience what the community and council representatives envisioned and adopted as a zoning code in the project proposed at Delaware Street. The aforementioned project meets this community vision, and it is with great enthusiasm I email and recommend to the board to approve this project for next steps of the entitlement process. Chris Castagno. And I think this is the last one. No, I read this one. I read that one. Yep. All right. I think that is all that was received via email. So the applicant may now respond to all of the input, both the in-person input and that which was communicated through other means.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, board members. I will try my honest best to synthesize this down to some key points. Although I did my best to take notes as I spoke this evening. We've heard a lot about from supporters in your comments read tonight, Mayor, about the comprehensive development. And it really is part of the rebuttal, fair rebuttal to the opposition. These plans are adopted into law, as I'm sure you all know, and they carry the force of law, and we're all supposed to follow them. They're blueprints for how folks are supposed to develop or not develop them. And when people follow them, like my client is doing, they are following the law, they're following the process. And I would submit to everybody here that if you spent time and money following the comprehensive plan and the vision the city had adopted, that you would be upset to hear that some folks feel if this is a vote, this is a popularity vote. It's about how many votes are in the room, how many people oppose it, as opposed to whether it meets the code, whether it meets the intent and the merits of the code. We've heard from some speakers tonight that we should just do what the people want to do. Take the code, take this comp plan, tens of thousands of dollars have been spent on comp plans over the year, and just throw this out. That is not the way the law reads. This is a planning tool. It's been filed in all due respect in this case by my client. And if you're not going to have rules, there will be absolutely no predictability in the process for anybody, including folks in this room who may go seek a permit or approval in the future. So I would respectfully submit that we have followed the rules. We are following the factors. We've offered expert testimony this evening consistent with those factors. We did not hear any expert testimony to the contrary tonight, refuting those factors. And so from a substantive and procedural due process standpoint, to have no rules, to throw rules out when there's enough people that show up, it's just unfair. My client would be unfair to others as well. Now, regarding Mr. Ziegler's expert testimony, and he's happy to speak again if anybody's memory is different. He made clear that he did perform a traffic analysis, and it wasn't limited to Delaware Street. He specifically mentioned 7th Street and the distance of the entrance that's proposed on this plan from the intersection, and why that was important, and why that helped, in particular with folks who would hit their brakes, maybe making a right in, hypothetically, so there was adequate time to brake. So McBride and Ziegler, over 30 years of experience as an engineer and doing traffic work, has looked at this and has analyzed it. However, I want to be clear that DelDOT, or DOT, did not require a traffic study. You know why? Because the number of trips were so low for this project, it was not warranted under their code. We did it. We did it because we thought it was the right thing to do, but it was not required by DelDOT. And that is confirmed in DelDOT's plus letter dated January 23rd, 2023, where DelDOT states, and I quote, first section 2.2.2.1 of the manual, traffic impact studies, TISs, are warranted for developments generating more than 500 trips, N trips, those are the ADTs, or 50 vehicle trip ends per hour in any hour of the day. Using the 11th edition of the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, DelDOT estimates that the subject development consisting of 32 multifamily low-rise housing units would generate 260 vehicle trip ends per day, and estimates the weekly morning and evening peak hours to end at 33 and 34 respectively. Therefore, no TIS is required. So while we realize and we understand there are traffic issues, particularly in the summer, cut-throughs, we understand that. My client did not cause them. My client did not create them. And because my client's plan produces so little traffic, by law, it's not required to do an analysis. And that those are quoted directly DelDOT's comments through plus. And again, nonetheless, my client had Mr. Ziegler do an analysis of this area. And you heard our engineer testify, his opinion, his analysis confirms compliance with the code, and we put the section up. And I'm happy to do it again if folks would like us to. But I thought we covered that pretty thoroughly, and I wanted to clarify that. Again, I know it's an important issue, but there are standards, and my client should not suffer the consequences of the traffic he is not creating here. He is a minor addition to this situation and is actually going to make some road improvements that in some ways help the situation. And it's certainly, the traffic production would be far less than a commercial use that's permitted and a hotel use that would be permitted. That is not speculation. That's in your zoning code. That is permitted in your zoning code, and it's a fair comparison because it gives the context to the situation. This property, I've been doing this for 20 years, is not going to remain vacant. It's just not. It's going to be developed by somebody, whether it's my client or somebody else. That's inevitable. We really truly believe this use minimizes traffic impact. And I think that's particularly important here, where we have this history of problems in the summer, that we pick a low trip generator. And that's what we've done here. And that's what my client in particular has done here. One of the other things I want to mention that came from the Office of State Planning to rebut some of the comments. This is on page 1 of the January 23rd, 2023 letter. The state strategies for state policies and spending. This is a brief paragraph. I'd like to read it. This is a level 1 investment area, reflects areas that are already developed in an urban or suburban fashion, where infrastructure is existing or readily available, and where future redevelopment or infill projects are expected and encouraged by state policy. Development in level 1 is consistent with the 2020 strategies for state policies and spending. Therefore, the Office of State Planning Coordination has no objection to this site plan, provided it meets relevant code sections of Newcastle City, which is what we respectfully see we did tonight. We confirm that as we did in front of the Planning Commission the past couple of months as well under their standards. Regarding the concern we heard tonight about the location of the dumpster, my client is happy to move that to the location by the tracks. So we can resolve that issue. That was something actually we had talked about doing. It didn't make it on the final print before tonight. I missed that. So that concern, certainly we understand. We will address that, and we are happy to have any condition put on to locate that dumpster over towards the tracks as opposed to behind any of the residential. That is not an issue for us, and we would agree to any condition that the board may want to put on any action and take this evening to that end. Since the property line issue was brought up, I apologize. I need to, I think I'm compelled to address that for the record for legal reasons. And there was a letter prepared by Thomas Mammarella, who represented my client on the closing of this property. I believe that is in the record. If not, we can put that into the record, but he investigated that very carefully and provided his legal opinion that there's a mistake in the deed. We have an engineer and a surveyor here who can confirm that in their opinion. There is case law that we have provided to your city solicitor in advance of the hearing because we became aware of this issue through our neighbor. There was discussion. My client shared that he had his lawyer look at this very carefully. His lawyer assured him that my client is in fact the owner of the strip in question. When you look at Delaware case law, and again, I'll refer you to the city solicitor, but in general, it says that as long as there is a general finding of legal possession, it's not the board's role to resolve those types of disputes between neighbors. It really is the role of the courts to do that if there's a question. So I would like to supplement the record since that came up in rebuttal through some brief testimony from Mr. Ziegler and his surveyor, and also a submission of Mr. Mammarella's letter into the record if it's not already in the record, to clean that up legally. So a couple more points and I'll sum up here.
While you're doing that, let me ask our solicitor to comment on that. So have you seen the documentation that Mr. Tucker just described? And have you heard or have you seen documentation relative to the adjacent property owner's concern? And what's your analysis of the situation?
I have not seen anything from the property owner, but I have seen items and documents and case law from the applicant. Looking at that, I think you can still make a decision tonight, and this dispute between them is between them to decide, and they can get their own counsel and figure that out. Okay? But you don't have to allow this land dispute to sort of, I guess the best word is to hold up a decision if you choose it.
So let me ask you this, so why would that be the case? Because it would probably strike most people that you wouldn't want to move forward with a land dispute. Why is that your recommendation?
From what I gathered from the case law that was sent to me, I did not have time to do a deeper dive into my own or to confirm it, but it didn't look like it was overruled or anything of that nature. It seems like they're allowed to continue to move on, and you can consider it, but it's not a complete bar to you making a decision. You can still use it as a potential, but it's not a bar for you to make a call tonight.
What's the amount of property that's in question? It's in this letter.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, we've got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Mr. Note from my office has researched the case law on this. He was handling this separate, Mr. Mamarella. And I'm happy to let him say a few words if that would assist the board. My opinion on the case, which I did look at, is that the court, and I see this in other zoning matters too, where there are private disputes. Generally, the courts, in my experience as a zoning attorney, discourage local zoning boards to get into those. If something's granted because it meets code, it meets code, and folks can litigate that. Folks can seek injunctions to stop building permits. There's other private mechanisms to address private disputes. And the courts have, in my experience, frowned on the normal zoning process being delayed or stopped because of private litigation that can resolve in the issue in the correct form. That doesn't mean you can't ask about it. It doesn't mean that we can't offer testimony if you'd like some on that. But we do have a surveyor here who's familiar with the issue. We do have the opinion of Mr. Mamarella. This issue was discussed between the property owner and my client in person some time ago. We made clear, or at least my client made clear, that his attorney gave him advice that it was his land. That's wrong.
Let me ask, so the cannons have remedies available to them.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. They can appeal this decision tonight if they wanted to, for example.
We will if we have to,
Wouldn't
but
encourage them, but that's their right. They can seek an injunction to prevent a building permit saying that they own this land. So there are absolute remedies to do that. And that's why we were careful to look at this. We were careful to contact the city solicitor about this. And I'm happy to, if the board likes to put Mr. Velskakis on the record just under oath to confirm what he shared with his neighbor, and he shared this in advance.
this is what I shared. I'm willing to show you.
So, so that's, I offer, and again,
I'd like to ask you to, if you could swear in Mr. Velskakis, that'd be great, and we could share on the record what was communicated.
Please raise your right hand again.
Sure.
Yes.
So I had met with the neighbor about 2 weeks ago, who was questioning.
Okay, speak up, George, please.
I met with you about 2 weeks ago when you were questioning the property in dispute. And over coffee, decided meeting with you.
Yep.
And Mrs. Stanix. I told you that my attorney had done his research, done the title search, and the property is mine.
You told me I didn't have to get a lawyer because you were taking care of it. And I said, okay, I didn't know I was in a fight because I showed him that the property that they did, the property they put is on my mom's property by 27 feet. I got a deed in my mom's safety deposit box and receipts that she paid for it in 68. And that's what I showed him. And he says, that's not yours, that's mine. And then he said all the dots were, I mean, I have when my mom bought it back in 68 and been paying taxes on it. When he bought the property at 604, before he added the railroad property to it, look what his property said. It's 150 feet from Delaware Street, not 200 feet. That's what he purchased. Up to my mom's property. There, I'm sorry.
We're not gonna resolve that.
Yeah, right. I mean, but I didn't have, that's all I showed him. I didn't know I had to fight for what I already had.
Any other?
The number of
Excuse-
parking spaces.
Sorry.
Yeah, that does take 5 spots.
Any other comments or any?
I would just offer, Mr. Mayor, this is exactly why the court says really the jurisdiction for these issues. You guys should not be, you folks should not be expected to resolve these kind of disputes. As you can imagine, there's depositions, there's, you know.
Documents and public record.
Yes.
Right. Understand.
That's why I asked for you not to vote until.
Anything else for, Mr. Felskakis?
No,
Anyone else?
no.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just want to hit the points, that were made for some, and hopefully put some folks at ease that we've addressed their concerns. The spots required by code are 1.5. We do meet them. They're not just pulled out of the air. That is a common formula used for a project like this to estimate parking needs. The 1 bedrooms in particular, probably 1 person living there, 1 bedroom. The 2 bedrooms, you might have an extra person. That's why it averages to 1.5. That's what council passed into law, not my client. And it is a very common ratio, and I've seen that used in other jurisdictions. Let me just talk briefly about the pictures, and I don't want to waste too much time on this, but since somebody has, I think multiple people suggested they were modified, I'm going to put on the record that these came directly from my client. They're dated, they're timed, and my paralegal who's here, who's also willing to offer sworn testimony, converted them directly from my client, who took them on his cell phone.
People, please be quiet. Thank you.
And put them on this PowerPoint. There was no modification, there was no wide angle, and Mr.
If anybody wants to take their conversations, please take it out of the room.
Thank you. But if you would like that sworn testimony, we're willing to offer that, but there has been no modification of any of these pictures. These come right from an iPhone, and there's the date and time for my client.
But it
He
is
took
on a
these
Sunday,
pictures. The testimony was this was a wide angle lens. It was not a wide angle lens.
No, but you're taking it.
Okay, guys, not a debate, not a debate.
So there should not be a need for off-street parking. But those are the pictures that we've taken for my clients. Also for the record, this is not in the historic zone. There was a question about floodplain. If I could briefly let Mr. Ziegler respond to that. He is aware of that. A large portion of the floodplain. Elevating buildings up above it when they're redeveloped is a code requirement. But Mr. Ziegler, if you could just offer in rebuttal a couple comments on how that is done in your experience as an engineer, and if that's common in your experience here in Newcastle.
Well, many properties in the city of Newcastle are in the 100-year floodplain. The floodplain elevation for this property is 8. We are required by code to build at 18 inches, the finished floor of the building above the floodplain. And we've set the elevation of the building to roughly 2.5 feet above the floodplain. And we're tying into a drainage system that drains Delaware Street and also drains West 7th Street. And I'm not aware of any drainage issues on those corridors right there.
So is it your testimony that raising the building as you propose is consistent with code?
It's not only consistent by code, it's required by law, and it will get reviewed by the federal government, FEMA.
Lastly, I would just ask, I mentioned earlier that the planning commission did support this project unanimously. While they're not here tonight, I know Mr. Rogers was present, and I don't know what the protocol is, but perhaps comment about that hearing from him or his input as the town's professional planner. That would certainly be welcomed by us in the record, if that is the desire or the normal protocol for the Board of Adjustment. And
Mr. Rogers. Yes. Mr. Rogers. If you could summarize what the planning commission heard and what their reactions were, that'd be great.
The concept plan was submitted to the planning commission for their December 19th, 2022 meeting for review as a concept plan and for a recommendation for this board. The planning commission found that the proposed development is consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommended that the applicant provide the following prior to proceeding to the Board of Adjustment. One, preliminary architectural plans and preliminary site plans demonstrating compliance and commitment to the design standards contained in section 230-21.1G of the zoning ordinance. And two, written responses to the plus comments. And I believe that they satisfied both of those comments or both of those conditions.
And the plus comments were returned when?
They were returned
Yesterday
yesterday to the Office of State Planning. That's a formality that we do, but we did do that. We did do that requirement. Thank you, Mayor, and I thank everybody for coming out tonight and their comments. They were all listened to, and we're happy to answer any questions the board may have before you make a vote tonight. But thank you, everybody, for your patience and your time this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Bob, you have any questions? No. Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Can I? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good, public hearing. Okay, we're going to enter into a business meeting where we talk amongst ourselves, based upon, what we've heard tonight, and over the intervening, weeks about this and, render an opinion. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Well, I keep going back to, there's nothing in the code that talks about the number of units per acre, except that one spot that talks about a multi-mixed use building, right? It says it limits the number of units to 10 units per acre if it's a mixed use building. Right, so in my mind, I'm going back and thinking, all right, so I don't know if it's an oversight when they wrote the code or what happened with it, but in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm just gonna say if it wasn't a mixed use building, I would see a limit of 20 units. That's me interpreting it and reading it. I think I feel more comfortable if this was 20 units on an acre, because it's an acre of land, right? And it seems like this is leading towards something that would limit it to 10 units per acre. So that's where I'm kind of standing, but there's no guidance really in the code about a limit. Kind of inferring, okay? But what would be the difference if something was mixed use versus this? Okay, so I'm thinking that would solve some of the parking problems, maybe some of the congestion. I know I've been on 7th Street and I don't see it empty like that too often. A lot of times when the salon's working and the barber shop's open, everybody's parking near there. When people come to the financial office, I know the other day I parked on the street, so they go see the accountant. So I'm more leaning towards saying no right now, because I'd like to see 20 units per acre.
I'm in the same boat. I mean, it feels like we've had this conversation before, I think with one of the other projects. I feel the same way about the 20 units that Steve brought up. Traffic is an issue. And I know that's not something that we're supposed to really address at this particular board, but it's a concern throughout town, throughout spring and summer. And I'm leaning towards no.
So here's my thought about this. I mentioned earlier that it's too bad that over the last 10 years and we've not had a chance to master plan this entire area because it's in need of that because of you couldn't design a worse roadway. You've got a state highway with a curve leading into a shopping center with a set of railroad tracks going into the community in different ways. You've got several old buildings. I actually found pictures from the interior of the Pompeii. It was actually a postcard back in the day.
I think
Mangini online. Sent
that.
And so I'm concerned, you know, look, I mean, when you look at some of the other buildings in this vicinity, they're tired, they're old, they're not attractive, and the entire area needs to be master planned. To me, it's quite clear that the barber shop and the beauty salon are misplaced at this point because there's just not sufficient parking. And look, you all know what I do for a living. I'm about as pro-business as it comes, but there's a place where things belong and where things don't belong. And I used to patronize that barbershop, and I walked there, but it was always a difficult place to park. So without sufficient parking, as the community reimagines that corner, if that building were ever taken down or something was built in its place, that probably needs to be done very thoughtfully, because that only exacerbates the problem on that corner and a good block or so within that area. I will say this. You know, we talked about homeowners versus renters. I was a homeowner in this community for 10 years, and I've been a renter for 2.5. I was a renter at other parts of my life and have been a homeowner in several other parts. I didn't intend at this point in my life to be a renter, but I am. And very happy to be living in Shawtown, right at 9th and South Streets. But was also very proud to be a homeowner in the historic area and taking care of one of the nicer homes in the community. It's either us or the state, because it turns into a museum if they're not in private hands. But the truth and the realities are this. There are a substantial number of the people in this country who are walking around with their share of $1.5 trillion of student loan debt. They do not have the debt to income ratio necessary to buy a home. They are going to be renters for longer periods of time. If you take the time to call Deemers and the Helm, the Garrison, and you look at what they're charging for rent, until recently with higher interest rates, you could have bought a home and had a 30-year amortization, and you could have owned a home for less in many cases than what rent is. But people don't have the down payment necessary, and they don't have the credit score necessary because of their debt load from higher education. You also have an attitude, and I've got a 21, a 23, and a 25-year-old who they're very transit. Their whole attitude about things is pick up, pack up, and go. No car, walkable communities. One of them didn't even bother getting her license until she was 18. I mean, I was at the DMV the day it opened when I turned 16. But that's just not the attitude of the generation today. Also, I'd say this. We do have, and it was pointed out in one letter and some of the comments, you do have a number of seniors. Number of seniors that are looking at places like the Helm in particular, with an elevator as de facto senior housing. They move from the historic area with narrow staircases and they want to stay in town. They grew up here, they lived here, and they view that as a constructive alternative. That's just the nature, and that's not a trend that's stopping. And there are pages and months worth of people on waiting lists at every single one of these places. Don't take my word for it. Pick up the phone or drive over there and stop in and ask any one of them. They'll tell you the same story. What you heard anecdotally tonight is 100% right. There's a tremendous need for more of this. The other part that I would say, and there's been some commentary about some of these places where these other multifamily properties have been built. You know, the Helm and Deemer's Landing in particular, that is where Deemer's steel smelting was. And that place needed millions of dollars of remediation before it could be put back into productive use. And when we take places and someone comes in and they're willing to invest, and in this property case, where you have a couple of buildings, and this is just a partial view of the Pompeii, and I'm looking at seating for 44 right there with those 11 tabletops of 4, and you take what have been buildings that have remained largely uncared for a long period of time, or you've got ground that needs to be remediated. All that said is this is exactly the kind of thing we need to do in order to bring these properties back into a productive use. And so when you look at this project in particular, and I think of what could be there, okay? So I think about 48, call it 50 cars, okay? If you had a restaurant on that site and you put 100 tables, or sorry, you had seating for 100, you're gonna have 5-6 wait staff, you're gonna have a couple people in the kitchen, you're gonna have a bus boy or 2, you're gonna have a hostess, a manager, you're gonna have probably 10 unrelated people coming to work every day, and that's, and a bartender. That's just the staff. That's not deliveries. That's not even customer number 1. And you're gonna have, and heaven forbid if it's popular, okay? You're gonna have a steady stream of people coming in and out of there, and you're gonna have, as was pointed out by the number of trips, you're gonna have a regular steady stream of cars coming in and out of there, especially probably on a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. I'd be very disappointed in that, because that is a headache. Retail, somebody suggested retail. In addition to running the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce, we are also the National Association of Manufacturers affiliate. We're the Delaware Manufacturing Association. We're also the National Retail Federation affiliate. We're the Delaware Retail Council. Retail in this country has changed rather dramatically. People are not going into brick and mortar retail. Most people under 40 shop 24/7 and they do it online. There is less and less retail being constructed. In fact, the retail that is being constructed, and there's conversations already at Christiana Mall about adding multifamily housing there because destination shopping is less and less a thing. So while it might sound charming to build retail there, I can tell you for sure that it has had to be nothing other than magician's work to keep the shopping center across the street from this location filled with tenants. Dollar Tree and Dollar General are the most prolific tenants around the country, followed by some of the cell phone companies. The banks want to get out of the real estate business. They can't get rid of those branches fast enough. I haven't been to my bank in 10 years. I do it all online. So this is tricky business. And so when you look at things like a hotel or motel, or what could have been there, and there was interest from people who would have made this a place for people coming out of drug or alcohol rehabilitation. Those were ideas that were on the table. Those people approached those property owners. When you look at what this could be, and when you think of, okay, call it 40 some cars, they leave between the hours of 6 a.m., say almost all of them work, 6 a.m. and 8:15, 8:30 in the morning, they all leave. That's a few cars every 15 minutes or so. And they come back. That to me is a far less burden. Trust me, I see it on 9th Street, and I was dumbfounded when I moved there. The amount of traffic we get coming from Dobbinsville and cutting over, and I don't mean the people in Dobbinsville, I mean people coming from the south or people cutting across because they want to avoid the traffic light at Basin Road. it's a steady stream of cars. So I see the exact same problem everybody else has mentioned here tonight too. But when I look at this and when somebody wants to invest a good amount of resources and clean up an area, that also needs to be master planned, because these other properties will similarly fall, and we won't do it in a coordinated and thoughtful way. That would be too bad. So to me, residential is the smartest of the options. It is the least intrusive of the options. And I mean, when I look at the number of people in this room, we all got out of our cars right now and we got out of here. The parking lot and everything, the surrounding area, we'd be out of here in 5 minutes. That's it. So the last thing I'll say is this, and I saw we have one or two, and Mr. Baldini's here, and I'm not picking on him because he's only been a trustee for a short period of time, but we've had people who have openly complained about stuff like this, and I'll be damned if one or two or three of them have been trustees of the Newcastle Common. It's a land trust. It's a land trust. Open your damn mouth, and why don't you open the wallet and buy the properties? It's a redevelopment business. They buy, they sell, and they manage properties. Somebody could have said something, the very people who, and somebody was in here earlier, could have said something while they were a trustee, could have bought the property. This was gonna happen. And yet not a single creative idea out of some of those folks that have been trustees. It was an opportunity to say, okay, we're gonna take this on, we're gonna sit on it, we're gonna figure this out, because they have the ability. That's what they do. They're not government. Let's be clear, they're not government. They're popularly elected, but they're not government. It is a land trust. It's a REIT, real estate investment trust. They buy, they sell, they manage properties. What they do. It's a little frustrating. Maybe you can hear that in my voice. So I support the plan. I support the plan because I worry of what comes next. If it's not this, it could be a number of other things, and I think you're going to have a lot bigger problem on your hand, especially if Mr. Velitzakis decides to sell this to somebody else, or if he doesn't have to come to this process. This was made clear earlier on. Does not have to, there will be no meeting like this for any of these other permitted uses. If he's got a plan and it's a hotel and the planning commission says they don't have that much authority, it checks all the boxes, by right, he will build it and it'll be done. If he wants to do something else that fits within the code, there will be no Board of Adjustment hearing, no public input like this. By right, he is entitled as a property owner with property rights to go construct that, or some other developer will. So my view is this is the best of the options. And I think, and I will be out of office, but I think somebody in the next few years needs to master plan that whole area. I've been talking about that for 10 years and I've gotten nowhere with neighbors or any elected officials. And I think you ought to talk to all of them about it and you ought to make it a priority, because sure as we're sitting here, that building where Pizza History and Chili's is gonna be gone. Sure enough, that beauty salon and that barber shop are probably gonna be gone. The property is just too valuable and it's time to clean it up and time to do it in a comprehensive and thoughtful way. And this is a terrific addition, and it's the best option that you're gonna get. And I think if you sit and you think about it and you think of, 20, 30 cars over the course of a morning, and 20, 30 cars, as opposed to a restaurant, which are gonna be 40, 50 cars, maybe every hour for several hours, and then people there till 10:30 at night, sitting at the bar. Careful what you wish for. I'll shut up now. Anyway, I guess we need to make a motion to, I'll make a motion, and I think you guys can amend it. You can do as you wish. I'm gonna move that we accept the special exception as give me 1 second. I'm gonna move the application as submitted. You can decide whether you want to second and debate it or not, or whether you want to amend it.
Yep, the moment everyone gives their basic.
Sure, sure. Or you can vote no.
Well, I'll vote no, because I think there needs to be guidance in the code. And this came up last time, and I think it needs to be addressed by somebody outside of us, by council. And if you had something that limited what the units are per acre, we wouldn't be here. Or else if a decision be made, and we figure out easier. From my standpoint of all the input I hear, less units would be more acceptable. And that's where I'm at, and so I'm voting no, and that's the reason. And I would vote for something that'd be in a range of 20 to 25 units per acre, I'd be good with. The 32, I think is gonna be problematic. And with my good conscience, I vote no.
Okay. Or do you want to make an amendment to approve 25?
I can make an amendment to approve 25. I would do more 24. Because it's 2 per acre, for the parking spot. I would approve 24.
Bob, what do you think?
I would second that amendment. And I would vote yes for that.
All right. All right. So we have, Christopher, we have a motion and an amendment to provide an agreement for an approval of a, oh my God, here, let me get my stuff.
7.
Right, so their application is for 32 apartment units. You would agree that they've met their standard for the special exception up to 24 units.
That's correct.
If you want to make that motion and I guess a second,
Yep.
and then you guys can.
I will make a motion to approve the application for these special exception for 24 units. Given that the applicant has met all the other necessary conditions.
I said,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
And I think that you need us to just provide more justification for that.
I've heard a lot, but if you just, I know where you stand on it about the code provision. I think you've already put on the record, Bob, if you could just put your analysis on the record as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see guidance from the code, on that particular issue.
I really want me to talk more. Nobody else does.
I know. To draft the decision based on your basis. But I have a little bit from you, or now this is a little different. You're comfortable granting it. It's just a matter of.
You're on the I would go further with all the conditions.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Sure, what's that?
Very good. Thank you, everybody.
No, not already.
So now.